Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the work session to order with roll call. Neil?
Councilor Zhang.
Okay, or AJ?
Here.
Councilor Mo.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow.
Here.
And Councilor Visionary.
Here, and thank you. It looks like everyone is in attendance, and the first item is going to be the independent review of the 7/29/20 Thurston protest with Nancy. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, councilors. I understand we do have a very full agenda this evening, so I won't take much time introducing Rick because if he has a very comprehensive and impressive resume and biography, and I encourage, if you haven't taken the time to look at the packet and review that, to do so, and also the public to do the same. Rick has had a lot of opportunity to do these types of investigations after various events, including the riots in Ferguson, Missouri. He also completed a review of the Stockton police response to the Bank of the West robbery and hostage taking. So he has a wide and impressive experience. So with that, I'm going to let him do the talking and talk about his investigation process, the methodology, what that entails. It's a lot more than just looking at video footage, although that certainly is a component of it. And then take any questions that you may have. So that I'll leave it to Rick.
Perfect. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, council members, for seeing me this evening. I guess I need to share my web.
Yes, please. We'd like to see you, sir.
There you go.
I'm here. I'm just talking voice. Hopefully, it came through. I'll assume it's there since I can't see it.
You can see you. Yep.
Perfect. So my resume describes what I've done. More importantly, I think what you want to hear is how I do these things. So I've been doing these critical incident reviews across the country for about 7.5 years now. And the way that I approach them, either as part of a team or individually, is you've got the incident itself on the 29th. But I'm going to date myself here. I'm going to do a Paul Harvey, and it's what's the rest of the story, with a focus on not just the incident itself and the use of force, but how do we take that information and that event and look at opportunities for improvement. We approach these very much like a professional sports team. You can pick whatever sport you like or college sport. The best of the best look at the game film to figure out how to do it better next time. So not only looking at the open source information that I have, that'd be all the YouTube posts, the things that are available to the general public, but really taking a deeper dive into all the processes that led up to it, the incident itself, and then anything done after the fact. So there's been a request made for information to the city attorney on things that I'm looking for, and basically drilling down into what was the planning and preparation for the incident. How was the incident command managed? What was the direction to the line officers? Who was in charge in the field? What were the supervisors' directions from the executive staff? We'll look at your department policies, your strategies, your tactics, the type of training that the officers have in use of force, the type of training the officers have, and command staff, all the way up through command staff, have in crowd management, whether it's parades all the way up through protests. Crowd management covers all that. And then looking at, what were the communications between the department, the city and the residents, the department and the residents, the department and the protesters, and taking it and putting it into an entire package to tell a story. And in doing so, looking at not just, again, the video that has gone on to YouTube and open source, but really what's the rest of the story and what's all the behind the scenes portions of that. COVID is kind of restricting, as you know. I mean, you're here at your homes. It kind of hampers a little bit about what I do. It's really hard when you go into a city, it's really easy to get a flavor for your town by just talking to the community folks, eating at your local restaurants to kind of get a feel. We can't do that now, so we have to rely on other ways of doing it. So to kind of slow the process down a tad and kind of limit me just a little bit, but I'm confident that working through the city manager and city attorney, that we can figure out how do I best meet people online, talk to the community, get information from them. What you end up at the end of the day is a report that will go to the city manager and city attorney in a draft form that's given to them to fact check, not necessarily to discuss opinions or recommendations or lessons learned, but to make sure that I've understood the policies correctly, I've got the timelines right, that I don't miss something on the factual end of it. I also have what I call a no surprise rule or no ambush rule. There's nothing that will be released to the city manager and city attorney that we haven't already discussed. There'll be no surprises to them, and therefore no surprises to the chief. It really is an interactive process. It's not an I gotcha process, but really looking for not to lay blame, but to establish cause. How did the things happen the way they happened in the process? And along the way, I don't know what I don't know. So I become a very annoying 5-year-old asking a lot of why questions. I prep the city and the agency itself, the police department itself. It may seem like I'm asking a lot of questions that are obvious to them, but it's just helping me to understand what not only happened in July, but really how does the organization work? How does command structure work? How do their policies work? So most people think it's just a quick look at the video and render an opinion. That's not really in the city's best interest. You really want to look for ways to how do we improve our performance as an agency, just like we would if we were doing something on some sport or some artwork or something that we do. Timeline wise, the goal is to get this done within the contract period. I'll keep the city manager and city attorney advised of my progress. We'll get regular progress reports on where we're at. Sometimes we can go a little bit faster. Sometimes we get bogged down either through some technological glitch or something that I'm looking to get that nobody thought I might need. So sometimes the information requests take a little bit longer than expected. That's kind of the generalities of what I do. More importantly, I thought it'd give you the opportunity to ask questions. I do these all the time, so I kind of just blaze through it, but I really want to find out from you what your thoughts are, what your questions are, both now and in the future.
I have Leonard Steer. Councilor Steer, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Visionary. Rick, thanks for that report. I wanted to find out, you were saying that one of the things that you review are the instructions and the commands that were given from higher up in the department during the demonstration. Are there audio records? Are there texts? What kind of records do you review to put that together?
Anything that's available to me. So I don't know exactly because I don't know what's out there yet. So I'll ask the agency. Basically, in an incident like this, there's called what's a commander's intent. So the commander's intent will tell you what their expectations are and the directions. One of the standard ways of doing this is through an incident action plan. So that request has been made for the incident action plan. Also for any communications that are not privileged that I might be party to or be able to look at in the process. So we look for all that, including commands that are given out in the field.
Thank you.
Joe?
I see you. Go ahead, Marilee.
Sorry,
I don't see. I hear
I'm
you.
not on camera. You wouldn't hear me at all.
No.
I have a question, Rick. How do you set up interaction with the parties or the community that was involved? How do you go about setting that up?
Well, that's a really good question because we haven't had to do it this way before. Normally it's on site, done through the manager's office, the city attorney's office to do small group meetings. This is going to be a little bit different because we've got to figure out how to do it electronically.
Right.
I'll work with the city manager, whether that's a large group meeting, whether it's small group meetings, but it's whatever that, and working with her and her staff is that we feel is in the best interest to get the greatest amount of input in the shortest amount of time without sacrificing information and experiences.
Do you, I guess you do both. You do both one-on-one and possibly in a group setting?
Each review is a little bit different. We have done some one-on-one in the past. Most of them are done in group settings based on the special interest of the group, whether it's a neighborhood association or, for example, sometimes we'll meet with ACLU representatives. There might be a business association involved. We're meeting with the business association. So that's the parts I don't know, because I know I don't know that. So it's a matter of trying to figure out what are the best small groups to meet in that we get the information that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
So Rick, if I get a quick question too, and Sherry, I got your hand up. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you. So Rick, I think what is, and I'll have to confirm with Nancy, but I think would be very important and part of your work here is, other than finding out or getting to the root of what the issues are, and I believe hopefully you were charged with some suggestions on resolution to those issues so they don't come back, some work-throughs on those. But I think I want to make sure that you are available for literally a question and answer period from anybody in the public, not just the people that were there, but if there's citizens that are curious as to, okay, tell me about this. So because I think, the whole city is paying for you, and I think that it's important that all the citizens, the taxpayers, have that ability to make that connect with you. And it may be onerous, but I have to check. Nancy, is there something in there that will allow for that?
Yes, Councilor Pictionary. We made a provision in his contract to conduct a community forum. And, I would envision doing something very similar to what is happening tonight, where Rick talks a little bit about how he conducts his investigation and then takes questions, comments from people online, and we can moderate through that. Might take some time, but I think it's well worth the effort. We don't have a date and time yet, but we will make sure that it's widely broadcast.
I think that would go a long ways. And Rick, you assume that's going to happen, or you have plans for that? You've done that before?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And I'm sorry for jumping ahead of you, Sherry. Go ahead.
No problem. So you're looking specifically at this incident that happened on July 29th. My question has to do with, is there going to be a broader, you're going to bring back to us some changes that we might look at for policy and procedures that were part of the reason why this incident? I mean, what I'm asking about is, there going to be further ramifications from this incident investigation? We're just not looking at this incident, but we're looking at kind of a overview of how we got there, and as Joe had mentioned, how we could avoid it in the future.
Yeah, so great question. What I do is I compare, that's why I look at training and policies and all that and command structures, and I compare what not just happened on the 29th, but how Springfield is structured and manages these. I compare those to best and promising practices in the US and Canada, and kind of benchmark off of those to look for opportunities to improve. We're always looking for that. So my expectation is we're going to find something that needs some modifications or some additional attention. That could be something you're doing really well, that we need to do more of it. And then there might be some areas where there's policies that the department or trainings the department may not be aware of that they could avail themselves of. The one thing in life is we know what we know, we know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And so what I'll bring to, not just in this report, but the PD and to Springfield, is what are some things out there going on that you may not be aware of as promising practices that may fit within your community. So that's the goal of going, not just about the incident itself, but looking broader for future events. And again, trying to, how do we improve performance? Even if we did a really great job, how do we do it better the next time?
So just to follow up on that, I read you provided some training, some books and things. Are you available, or would you make available to us suggestions of who or how we might, where we get those materials, who might be able to present those materials to make improvements?
Absolutely, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, I have you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So Rick, just a couple of questions. You mentioned, confidential or protected communications might be stuff that you would not, evaluate. I guess, is that something that normally comes up? Like we don't have material that we're holding back from you, right?
No, you're not. I'm just not familiar with all the confidentiality clauses in your personnel actions or personnel files or background files. There are certain things that are protected I might want to look at that I may not either have access to remotely, or we might have to figure out a different way to look at it. Each state has laws and confidentiality, particularly when it comes to personnel records and or discipline records.
Okay, so it sounds like something that, like, if it comes up, you're going to work with Nancy, and something will get figured out, so you can see the whole picture of information.
Correct. And it may be that we have to figure out some live way to stream it, so I don't take possession of those documents. I just don't know because I don't know what I'm going to find.
That's perfect. When we get the report, or is it going to come with you're going to come with some stuff we did good, stuff we have to learn from? Is it then are you bringing sort of remediation actions for issues, or is that something that you're going to just give us the information and it's up to us to remediate?
Yeah, if identify areas where improvements could be made, I'll also give recommendations on how to do those.
Okay.
Major detail, significant detail, if we've got those, or recommendations to go somewhere to do whatever we find, because again, I don't know what I'm going to find yet.
Okay.
But I just leave you hanging with, hey, this is something you need to work on without options of how to work on it.
Okay. And I guess the other question that I have is, like, you did a good job of describing that the event actually has a before the event and the after the event. Are you looking into, I guess, other reports of like how the PD followed up on, I guess, other sort of like mini incidences or other sort of crimes that happened during the event are you just narrowed down to the specific barricade, if you will? Does that make sense?
It's the bigger event.
Okay. So we may get feedback back saying, hey, look, you had this big event. There were other reports of crimes. How did you follow up on them?
Correct. It could lead to you.
Okay. And then I'm curious if you just have any general opinion about, like, there's a lot of video content, and I know that that's a product of where we are in 2020. Is this your first time dealing with that much video content? What's your sense of, is it helpful, not helpful? There's a lot out there.
Oh, no, it's not the first. A lot. Yes, you're right. I can't emphasize how much is out there. And what I try to do is you temper that with what's been chosen to be posted. And so you're looking at what's the rest of the story. That's the bigger piece. The piece that we see on the public side of it, you can piece that together. It's what's going on outside of the camera view, because almost all of it's camera view. And it's also learned. When you see that much video for an agency, understanding that much video is going to be pushed out. It just happens everywhere now. That's just common.
I think it's the new
changes have to be based on that. So,
yeah. Just two other quick things, and I think these are more for Nancy. My preference would be to start with as transparent as possible with the community about this, right? Like, I know that there's other issues that we got to work through. And when you think about the community forum remotely, I thought the Holiday Farm Fire group did it really well as far as how they formatted it and how they reached out to everybody.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Counselor Steer, you're up to bat.
Thanks, Joe. You just said something really interesting, Rick, which is that you're just trying to piece together what's happening outside of camera view. How do you sort of reverse engineer that?
You got the camera view. It's crime reports and community conversations and interviews of reading the interviews with the officers, ones that were already done, to find out kind of that outside piece.
And members of the public, presumably, right?
Correct.
Thanks.
Rick, I've got a question. If Marilee, did you have anything? I don't see you, but I didn't want to jump ahead of you. Okay, I think she's good.
Not yet.
Okay, thank you. So Rick, I got a question. It's down in the weeds just a little bit, but I'm really curious how far down in the weeds you're going to get, because I want you to. But specifically, you mentioned training, and so what I'm looking for is, well, actually, number one is that I assume you're going to be looking for trends. Sean Van Gordon, or Councilor Van Gordon, mentioned that there's other incidences out there that may be depicting trends or cultures. And so what I am very interested to see if you can identify a culture within the agency, and then realizing, and Councilor Moore kind of hit on it as well, as far as these issues, are you going to look to identify some systemic problems that create those cultures, and frankly they go into next generation of officers that don't even realize that they are in a culture that has some systemic problems, and so that's pretty extensive, and that's a lot of work, but from my perspective, that really is where a lot of problems lie within law enforcement, is those systemic cultures that are pre-existing to officers being hired. So and I've got a two-part to that, so go ahead and answer that one.
So first one, if I identify anything in the way that's kind of outside the scope of work that we got, then what I'll do is I'll talk to the city attorney and the city manager, say, hey, listen, this is outside the scope. Do you want to keep going that direction? Or in the report, I can make a recommendation. Here's the review. Here's the review of what I'm doing. And here's some additional follow-up that the city may want to consider in the future. The one thing I can tell you that I try to do in these reports is try to get the agencies to move into just through the reports and the office to turn into learning organizations, to where they're constantly assessing what they do and learning from events, so we get better next time, versus just saying, hey, high five, we did it right this time, we'll do it the same way the next time. And part of that learning, evolving organization is that you're critical of yourself and constantly trying to change, which is kind of hard sometimes for an agency. But kind of to your original thing, I identify this kind of outside this additional review, additional work, then I definitely gets flagged, and discussions occur with the city manager, city attorney, and how much deeper do you want me to go on this? It's kind of outside the scope, or do you want to stop here and look at it in a different way?
Thank you. It's a significant time delay here. We're having some Wi-Fi issues, which is not uncommon. And so my second part of that is you indicated that you are going to look into the training, and again, this may be in the weeds, but are you going to be able to, you're going to look at training records, I assume, and with those training records, are you going to be looking at their field force training, their defensive tactics training, their use of force training, and then to see if there is any tie-ins as to you're going to look at the curriculum of those specific courses, are you not? And then if there's tie-ins to specific instructors in those courses, so if you see issues that are arising out of some sort of use of force, are you going to be able to look at those training records to see if there is a commonality with those instructors that are providing those courses, and to look at that angle, because the officers are going to respond how they're trained, and it may be how they are trained is where the problem's at. I got nothing. We've got nothing, Rick. You may have to turn your camera off for us to be able to get your audio. Still nothing. We got nothing. I'm sorry. Did anybody else get anything? Because I didn't.
I've got nothing.
No, nothing.
I'm not getting anything.
It's on Rick's end.
So maybe he'll email you the answer.
So there's a possibility that I don't know if he's got the invite available that he could log off and log back on into this meeting. I think it's important that we get what we want.
So let me interject here just for a moment, counselors.
Please.
Looks at his technology, maybe it's a Wi-Fi issue. To answer your question, Councilor Piscineri, we hadn't specifically gone that deeply in the scope of work to do a crosswalk between training, who conducts training, and then who is subsequently involved in the use of force. That doesn't mean to say that we couldn't do that. I'm just being mindful of our budget, and I'm prioritizing. Obviously, the training is important. I also want to make sure that we get at least one community forum, if not possibly two, depending on how many people are able to go attend to the first one. And there might be some smaller group things that we may need him to do. So I think as we proceed through the investigation, and if Rick tends to know some commonalities or some flags that are coming up for him, then I would trust him to address those with me, and then we could adjust accordingly. And I would come back to you with that.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there because I think systemic issues start at the very core levels and at the foundation of building officers up for street ready, and that I just want to see to make sure we're getting a close look as to how the officers are trained, how they the maintenance training, and if there is a deviation that is, and it's not, I'm not suggesting or saying that it's what's happening, but there could be deviation that's occurring over time that is away from standard practices or acceptable practices or current trends in those areas. I just want to make sure that that is not where there's any failure. And I did see Steve Moe, go ahead.
Cost is important, but it's more important that the public hear what he has to say, because they need to trust us. They need to know that we are doing the very best we can to get to the bottom of this. And when they can't hear him, they can't do that.
Councilor Piscineri, I believe he is back. Rick, are you able to speak? Looks like we're still having problems with it.
So Rick, I don't think we're able to hear you. At least I'm not.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Hello, hello. Hello.
We can hear you. Are you hearing us?
Is this what they call epic fail?
Well, not based on the technical definition.
Oh, okay.
Counselor, we're texting him to see if he can call back in.
Thank you, Neil.
Could you say
I'm
epic
on.
fail and do that again?
Yeah. Rick's back. Rick Brazil's back. I'm on the phone.
Rick, I'm on the phone.
So can he hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, there you are.
I can hear you. Can you hear
There we
me
go.
okay?
Okay.
So, Joe, are you on?
There we go.
Yeah, I am. It's just sketchy still. I think the question that I asked of you, Rick, was answered by Nancy in the sense that it's a little bit out of the scope of the contract that you have. But if you're starting to see issues that are leading you in that direction, you would advise her immediately, and we can look at where we want to go from there. But we don't want to ignore anything.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have questions of Mr. Brazil? Go ahead, Sherry.
So I'm just wondering if we have a beginning date. When is he actually on board and beginning the process, and how long are we expecting before we get a report?
So I've already started. So you have me under contract, and I've already started with data requests and information. The goal is to complete it within the contract period, but we'll see how it goes along the way, and I'll keep the city manager advised.
Now we're hearing two of you.
An echo, yes.
So, Sherry, I think basically what he's saying is he's working now already, but he's going to get it all to us, and the contract expires on January 31st of 2021. But I think the intent is to get it, before that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. It would be nice if we could see, I guess, a timeline of when citizens could expect that they might have an open forum meeting, or that kind of thing. So maybe that would be one of the things we might expect to see relatively soon.
It totally works for me.
Okay, so anyone else with their hands up? Marilee, do you have anything?
I don't, but I agree with Steve's comment earlier that I think it's really important to take care of that and make sure that, if it ends up costing us extra money, it ends up costing us extra money, but we need to make sure that we get this entirely covered.
Yes, definitely cross the T's and dot the I's. Absolutely. Yes. Yep. Okay. I think we're good to move on, correct? Head nods, yes.
Yes, nodding head.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Rick. We appreciate you meeting you and answering our questions, and go forth and do your best, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great evening.
You too. Okay, next item is the, where did it go here? Regarding the mayor vacancy process. Mary Bridget, take it away.
Good evening, council. It's Mary Bridget. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
We hear you great.
Great. Okay. I'm here before you tonight to talk about the mayor vacancy process. And I just want to frame up the conversation a little bit here in terms of time, because I know you have a busy meeting coming up. So we have some time reserved in the work session to talk about the vacancy process. Then there is some time in the regular session to come back to this topic. What I was hoping to do first in the work session is spend some time talking about process and answer your questions. and then save the regular session for voting and deliberation. Having said that, if we run out of time in the work session and you still have questions, or we're still not aligned on the type of process and voting you'd like to do tonight or next steps, then we can definitely take that time during the work session to do that. There's no reason to rush or feel like you have to move forward without feeling comfortable about what next steps are. And then before I really get going on all of the technical stuff, I just want to acknowledge that I think this is a really challenging thing to do for the council, and kind of at the end of a hard year, another hard thing to do. So I've been impressed how you've all handled it so far, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. So turning toward the process, oh, and then one other thing, if the council does not come to a decision tonight to appoint an interim mayor, you'll notice on your agenda, we have a temporary change to your operating policies and procedures to appoint what we call the council president pro tem to assist Councilor Pictionary while he's assuming the duties of mayor in the very short term. So we do have a fallback if we don't get to a decision tonight about interim mayor, and that would be someone to assist if he's absent or to help with the agenda review meetings and that kind of thing. So that's the other item that's on your agenda tonight, and I figure we can just kind of get through this and answer your questions and see if we need to address that or not. So as I mentioned, we are here tonight to talk about appointing an interim mayor. We have, the council's already discussed this, determined they wanted to choose from amongst the council, and 4 councilors submitted written answers to questionnaire that's part of your packet. I will note that Councilor Van Gordon was clear in his materials, and that he's more interested in what I'm calling the next term, which is the term that starts in January. The way the timing of this is, and looking at the terms, where the current term is the term that's now into January 2021. And then in January 2021, a new term starts. And that's an opportunity then also to appoint a mayor, or to have the same person could do it. But the council needs to make that appointment in January. And that's also a time when you'll appoint a new council president. And then another thing to consider is that choosing amongst the council also creates a councilor vacancy potentially. And really the details of that depend on the particular ward where the vacancy is, because your terms are staggered and each of you have particular things about that ward. So I can pause now if anybody has any questions or items for discussion that they'd like to talk about now.
Thank you, Mary Bridget. Councilor Steer.
Thanks, Joe. So my understanding is we have 2 things to resolve here tonight. The first thing is procedure on whether we're going to resolve the question of who presides over the council for the rest of the year, and then what else we're going to decide. And then after we've decided that, then we actually talk about the candidates. Is that correct?
That's correct. I recommend that you sort out the procedure like you stated, and then talk about the candidates. And then also there's particular voting, if you do get to a vote tonight, that I'd like to talk about that too before you get into voting.
That being the case, thank you, Mary Bridget. I would like to suggest that we limit our discussion tonight to the remainder of this year. I'd like to, in the interest of fairness, allow the new councilor in Ward 3 after the first of the year to help consider who is going to succeed whoever the mayor is for the rest of the year.
So Sean, followed by, well, Councilor Van Gordon, followed by Councilor Moore.
hypothetically, Mary Bridget, do we, I'm just trying, let me think about the question I'm asking. So could we as a council, I feel like we've done this in the past, meet prior to the first of the year and actually have a discussion that is, I don't know if binding is the right term, but I vaguely remember us inviting an elected counselor to the table to help get to a decision, to help from a time frame perspective. Could we do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think actually Councilor Woodrow might be able to assist with this. I believe that she participated in discussions when Mayor Likens became county commissioner. And she, at that time, I believe was elected but hadn't taken office yet.
That's correct. I was elected in May and had not taken office because I wasn't supposed to be sworn in until January. But when Sid got, Mayor Liken got voted into commissioner, then Councilor Simmons stepped back and put me at the table for the applicants and the discussions, the interviews for incoming. There were 2 incoming spots at the table for counselors, and I was involved in those discussions for that. Yes.
Yeah, and I know we're talking process here, but I think being able to have a broader, like if we get into it in the next session, having a little bit of a broader discussion about like to kind of arrive at something would probably make sense. But my concern would be that the longer we wait into January, right? Like at some point we have to resolve this, you know. So if we push it too far into January, then we're chasing the budget, and then then we're not going to have a full crew here until I don't know when. So if taking Leonard's sort of view that we have the material, right? Like, so we can get, if we end up in a place in November, maybe there's a structure we can, for us to begin to hash this all out.
John, I think actually we have that first meeting back in January is like the 3rd or 4th, that we could probably put that on the agenda right then. Sure.
I would be okay with that if we sort of take the material we put together right now and just sort of slide it all the way, into January, so we don't have to just reproduce the work, if you will.
Well, as long as we don't slide my questionnaire into January, because 68% of the public voted me to be a counselor Ward 6 starting in January, and that's my intention. Okay. Sherry, go right ahead.
Okay, I guess I'm unmuted. So we have been 2 months without a mayor appointed by this council, and we have approximately 2 months left until the beginning of the year, a little less than that, a little more than that. And I feel like we've been dancing around this whole subject, putting it off, and I was having difficulty trying to figure out why. But then I started figuring it out that, for instance, for Sean to be appointed for the short term this year, he would have to give up his council seat with no guarantee that he would be then appointed for the 2 years. So I understand why he wouldn't want to be considered for the short term for the year 2020. Joe, on the other hand, is going to be appointed as he's going to be sworn in to his seat in 2021, as is Leonard, as is, who's the other person? Is it Mary Lee?
No, not me.
Oh, I know, it's my, all right.
Sherry.
The new Sherry.
Great. Yes. Okay, I'll get there. Anyway, so I'm thinking, well, so I guess I've been seeing this as the interim mayor as being for the full 2 years plus this time. And that's not obviously how many of you are looking at it. So if we just take the, if I start to look at it then as only this remaining 2020 year, that's all we have left, we have a choice to make. Either we are going to appoint somebody or we are not for the 2020 year. And then the 2021 year is a whole nother issue. Make a decision about that person. Obviously, hopefully, you'll be ready to appoint somebody for 2021 for that 2-year period. But at this point in time, we're running with a council president who is acting as mayor. And I don't understand why we cannot make a decision to actually appoint somebody. And if we do, Councillor Van Gordon has indicated that he does not want to be considered for the short term. So that takes it down to basically 3 councillors who put in an application. I'm assuming that Councillor Pishineri, Councillor Stair, and myself would be the people who would be considered for the short term 2.5 months that we have until the end of the year. So I would like to really put us on the spot and say we either vote to appoint somebody or we say, okay, we're just going to slide for the rest of the year. We need to make that decision.
Joe?
Marilee, followed by Councillor Steer.
I following up on what Sherry said, the more I think about it, we have 6 weeks left of 2020, essentially, because December is a break for council. We basically got 6 weeks, and I think probably 3 of those at least are interviews with our commissions and committees, filling in. I'm going to go out on a limb right now, and you guys can throw it at me if you want to, and say that I don't see any reason why we can't just leave status quo as it is for the moment. And I haven't thrown my hat in the ring, so I would self-nominate for the council president pro tem and let everybody else take care of whatever business they want to take care of. But I would be happy to do that since I don't have a hat in the ring for the other, and leave it status quo and decide for January. And I put it out on the table. So.
And I think it was Councillor Mo was after that, or Councillor Steer? Either. Okay. Oh, Councillor Van Gordon.
Oh, so Leonard, some of this sounds like deliberation. Maybe we just wait, because we're off. I don't know if we're technically on the topic from a process perspective.
Thank you.
So maybe we have to hash this out in the next, regularly scheduled episode.
Yes, please.
We're close. I don't think we're that far off. We just need time to have a discussion in the right avenue.
I think this discussion really is best before the general public open meeting, council meeting, even though people are already watching this. But I really do believe that this type of conversation is best when we have the larger audience and people are sitting in on us. I do. But I don't want to cut people off, but I think we're bordering on deliberation. Mary Bridget, do you have a recommendation on how we can move forward?
So thank you, Councillor Pishineri. So it's 6:51 now to 6:52. So what we could do is, if the council would like, you could adjourn the work session, resume this discussion. I think it's might be under council business later in the meeting. Councillor Woodrow could then address her point for the City Council President Pro Tem. And you can have further discussion and deliberation about what you would like to do then.
That sounds good to me. I think we should pick this up in the next session, and I think I would like to address the mayor issue followed by the council president topic at that time. Anybody else got head nods? We good?
Sounds good.
All right. Leonard, you good? All right. So I think we're good, Mary Bridget and Nancy, Neil, and AJ, to conclude the work session and get back on Zoom or online, in a few minutes for the regular session unless staff has any other input, or Mary Bridget.
No input from me. I'll be ready to discuss it in the regular session.
Steve, go ahead.
Before you adjourn, I wanted to mention this on the independent review when Rick, was that his name, was speaking and we couldn't hear. I don't think there's an audio recording of that. If somebody would ask him to write some notes about what he said, because I'm really interested in hearing what he was trying to say to us. If you do those notes and get it to us, I would appreciate that. I know the public would too. That's all.
Thank you, Steve. It sounds reasonable to me. If we got the rest of the council, or at least a consensus that we would like to see what he had to say on those responses, would be great. Yes. All right. Sounds good. Nancy, did you get that?
I did. I don't know if people, it's kind of hard to recollect from memory on responses to questions directly, but I will have him do a written summary of how his methodology, how he approaches this, basically his talking points for tonight.
Let him do the best he can, because right now we have nothing.
Okay.
Well, our questions should be recorded.
Yeah,
Yes.
the questions should be there, and then when his audio
he might
goes
be
out.
able to.
Yeah.
He might be able to trigger in on what his answer was.
Okay.
Will do.
Thank you. So we'll see you all in a few minutes.
Thank you.
We'll see how it works.
Leonard moved. He's like, I'm on this side now. I'm a totally different Leonard.
What can I say? Virtually unrecognizable. That slippery trucker Len.
So does your mom call you Len? Like, where does the...
No, that was a complete surprise to me. My dad's name is Len. I never really anticipated being called Len.
Are you officially Junior?
No, they to save me from that, they gave me a different middle name.
But we still see him as a junior.
Yeah, well, you can if you
Right?
want.
All right, AJ, are you here? And Mary Lee, let's see, you're here. And we got Sherry Moore.
I'm
She's not
gonna
here.
try.
So far, so good. There she is. All right, AJ, are you here?
We're ready, Councilor Pictionary, when you are.
Oh, thank you, Neil. So I would like to call this regular meeting council session to order with roll call.
Councilor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow. Councilor Woodrow. Can you hear us, Councilor Woodrow? Councilor Pictionary.
Here. So I would like to commence with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us by phone or online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There are 2 times designated for public testimony this evening. First, we will have public hearings, which will be a time for anyone to speak to the specific items listed on the agenda. After the public hearings conclude, there will be time listed as business from the audience. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak either of those times, please use the chat window. It looks like a speech balloon on the upper right corner. Please send a comment to the organizer with your name, and not mailing address. Actually, we're changing that to your ward and the subject you would like to speak about. You can select the organizer at the bottom of the chat window. I will call on you when it is your turn to speak. For people calling in by phone only, you are in listen mode only and cannot be called upon. The order of public testimony is as follows. Anyone in person in the council chambers, you will be notified. Anyone who has submitted a chat and anyone who has submitted email in advance. If there is remaining time, Neil Ladati will read emails into the record. That being said, next item, Neil.
Councilor, your next item is the consent calendar.
I move that we approve.
Well, actually, Marilee, I think Councilor Moore wants to pull some items off the consent calendar. Go ahead, Councilor Moore.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to pull ordinance number 1, an ordinance to adopting the report of the city engineer and forming a local improvement district for the installation of sanitary sewer in Crest Lane. And also ordinance number 2, which is an ordinance amending section 8000 through 8016 of the Springfield Municipal Code to expand temporary emergency shelters for the homeless to include commercial buildings. So I just would like to pull those for further explanation to the public.
Okay, with those items removed, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent calendar minus the 2 items Councilor Moore just mentioned.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, Neil, by roll call.
Councilors Van Gordon,
Yes.
Councilor Mo, Councilor Mo,
Turn on my microphone. Yes.
Councilor Moore,
Yes.
Councilor Stair,
Yes.
Councilor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Councilor Pictionary.
Yes. It's unanimously passed. Next item.
We want to discuss those 2 ordinances.
Discuss those 2 issues.
Yes, this is the time.
Okay, thank you. So particularly relating to the ordinance to, we're going to, where can I find this? Create a, I'm sorry, looking for the actual wording here. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Thank you. I'm looking for the wording that has to do with the fact that we were creating a district. What do we call that? A local improvement district. Right, for the 2 properties that need to be connected to the sewer. And I read the letter from one of the parties who was very concerned about the cost involved. And I just wanted to thank very much the staff for all the work that they've done, but I also am wanting to express my sympathies to the owner who is having to take on this cost. But I also note that the city is offering to put that on a Bancroft, which at a low interest rate allows them 10 years to repay it. And so I just wanted to make sure that I guess that the owner knows that we did read it. I do understand, but also it is a health and safety issue, and we as a city are obligated to take care of it. So that was that one. And for the next one, the ordinance that has to do with the commercial buildings, I ask if, did anyone else have a comment about that first one?
Actually, excuse me, Sherry.
Yes.
Neil, do we vote on that passage of that item now?
If there are no other discussions on ordinance 1, we can read it into the record and vote.
Please do so.
Ordinance number 1, an ordinance adopting the report of the city engineer and forming a local improvement district for the installation of sanitary sewer in Crest Lane from 724 Crest Lane to 749 Summit Boulevard. That's project P21171.
Thank you, Neil. I will entertain a motion.
I so move.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by a yes to Neil's roll call vote.
Councillor Van Gordon,
Yes.
Councillor Moe,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Stair,
Yes.
Councillor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Councillor Pictionary.
Yes. Next item, Sherry.
Okay, I just wanted for us to explain what we were actually doing. I know that we took some time to discuss this, but the public may not be aware. In Ordinance 2, it says to allow the building at 1650 Centennial Boulevard or another suitable commercial building to be used as a warming center. And so what we have to do in order to allow that is expand. We have to change the code to allow that to happen in a commercial building. We already allow it in several other, in churches, well, I asked Nancy if she would just kind of speak to this, that we're not actually saying that we're going to do it right now, but we have to change the code in order to make it possible for us to explore that idea. Is that correct, Nancy?
Yes, that is correct. We actually have staff here if you have specific questions about the code or what we're intending to do with this ordinance.
Well, just what we already allow. We already allow warming centers to be in. Can you tell me what that says?
I do not have that in front of me. I would defer to one of our, is Sandy in the audience?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So currently we allow the cold weather shelter, which is how our code defines it, in public buildings or in churches. And so since neither of
It also says industrial site properties.
That's for the outdoor shelter. So
Oh, okay.
we're talking about in this case, it's the indoor shelter.
Okay, thank you. And so what we're doing is just expanding making that possible that we could use a commercial building for that overnight shelter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. There was some misunderstanding from the public. I just want to make sure they understood that we discussed it and that's what we were doing tonight. Sean?
So I don't know. I don't think I saw anything that was misunderstanding from the public. So maybe you have a piece of like an email or phone call with the rest of us don't.
Well, I work with the Mohawk Hawks, and so there's a lot of businesses who are in that area, and
okay.
they were hearing rumors, and so yes. So I just wanted, I'm also hoping to give them an opportunity to meet with Sandy and to have their questions answered. But there was a misunderstanding about what we were actually doing tonight.
They should absolutely feel free to meet with the city staff to talk about any concerns they have. And I think this is one of the unspoken things that we don't tell the city story very well is, like, we actually do a lot of legwork when it comes to finding EM warming centers every year and go out of our way to find a creative solution for Springfield. So, I mean, that's the good news part of this ordinance.
Joe, we also do a lot of legwork working with the public and with businesses. I mean, they have a connection with us. So when they have a question, they tend to ask us.
Joe?
Thank you, Sherry. And hang on, I had Councillor Steer with a question, unless Councillor Steer wants to wait.
I'll defer to Marilee. I can wait with my question. Thank you.
Okay.
I was just going to iterate that a couple weeks ago when we talked about this, we talked about expanding and opening it up for the commercial, but at the same time, there were some conditions that were set on it. And that was that surrounding areas were polled as far as, how their comfort zone when regarding it. The fire marshal was part of the approval process. And so there were different caveats as to whether a commercial building would end up being used or not. And hopefully with any questions that come from the public, like Sherry mentioned, they'll get more and more information that everybody's being brought to the table on it, and it's not just something that's going to be plopped down in the middle of them.
Councilor Steer, go ahead.
My question is actually related to Councilor Woodrow's. I wanted to find out, are these commercial properties limited to properties that are zoned commercial, or would they be open to properties that are zoned mixed use commercial as well?
Councilor Steer, I can address that question. So the ordinance has Exhibit A, and that defines a commercial building. So it's not actually based on zoning. It's defined as a commercial building. So a building that is used for commercial purposes. It includes vacant buildings in which the most recent permanent primary use was commercial.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion if
Thank
we're
you.
ready for that.
I so move.
I second.
Neil, did you need to read that?
Yes, Councilor. Let me read
I
that
shouldn't have
into
called
the
for a
record.
motion. Yeah, I shouldn't have called for a motion yet. Let's go ahead and read that. Yep.
No problem. Ordinance number 2, an ordinance amending sections 8.000 through 8.016 of the Springfield Municipal Code to expand temporary emergency shelters for the homeless to include commercial buildings and adopting a severability clause.
Thank you, Neil. Now go ahead with the motions. I'm sorry.
I so move.
I so second.
It's been moved and seconded. Take a roll call vote. Neil?
Councilor Van Gordon,
Yes.
Councilor Moe,
Yes.
Councilor Moore,
Yes,
Councilor Stair,
Yes.
Councilor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Councilor Pictionary.
Yes. And next item.
Next item, 3 public hearings this evening. Public hearing number 1 is a request for a Metro Plan diagram amendment for 36.57 acres of property, removal of nodal designation for 81.37 acres of property, and zone change for 45.63 acres of property located at the northwest corner of Marcola Road and 20th Street. Ordinance number 4, an ordinance amending the Eugene Springfield Metropolitan Area General Plan, or the Metro Plan diagram, by redesignating approximately 36.57 acres of land from commercial to medium density residential. Concurrently amending the Metro Plan diagram by removing the nodal designation from 81.37 acres of land. Concurrently amending the Springfield zoning map by rezoning approximately 36.57 acres of land from mixed use commercial to 20.74 acres of MDR and 15.83 acres of public land and open space. Concurrently amending the Springfield zoning map by rezoning approximately 9.06 acres of land from MUC to community commercial, adopting a severability clause, and providing an effective date. This is the first reading, and Councilor Pictionary, before Andy Lindberg starts with the staff report, you may have something to announce.
Yes, I do. Thank you for reading that, Neil. I hereby open the public hearing. Can we please have a statement of legal rights from the City Attorney's Office?
Thank you, Councilor Pictionary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
This is Christina Kraz from the City Attorney's Office for the record. Tonight's hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing on a proposal for a set of Metro Plan diagram amendments and a Springfield zoning map amendments. A copy of the procedures and agenda for tonight's hearing and copies of the staff reports have been posted on the city's website on the City Council meeting page. Any person with an interest in tonight's agenda item may offer relevant oral or written testimony or both. To preserve your right to appeal the decision to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, you must testify orally or in writing before the City Council closes the public record. You must raise an issue clearly enough so that the council can understand it, and you must offer evidence in support of it, or else you cannot raise the issue on appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. If you are the applicant, you must raise concerns about any conditions of approval clearly enough to allow the City Council to respond, to preserve your right to seek damages in circuit court. If you feel you need more time to prepare evidence or testimony for the City Council, you can ask the council to hold open the record or to continue the hearing. You must make that request before the council closes the public portion of the hearing. Decisions on whether to extend the public hearing or a written record are discretionary with the City Council. Please make sure your testimony is related to applicable criteria. The criteria for this application are located in Springfield Development Code Section 5.14-135 for the comprehensive plan amendments and Section 5.22-115 for the zoning map amendments. If you are joining us online with tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to provide public comment, please use the chat window. It looks like a speech balloon in the upper right corner. Please send a comment to the organizer with your name, mailing address, and whether you are in favor, neutral, or opposed to the application. You can select organizer at the bottom of the chat window. The council president will call on you when it's your turn to speak. For people calling in by phone only, you are in listen-only mode and cannot be called on. The council president will call members of the public attending the meeting in person first, and then those online. When you are called on to speak, please begin your testimony by giving your name and mailing address. A mailing address is necessary for the record and to provide you with notice of the City Council's final decision. If you represent someone else, please say so. If you have any exhibits you want the council to consider, such as copy of testimony, photographs, petitions, or other documents or physical evidence, please hand it to staff in City Hall if you are there in person, or email it to alimbird@springfield-or.gov. That is alimbird@springfield-or.gov. That will need to be mailed in before the City Council closes the public record. Members of the City Council are to be unbiased in this decision. Before the start of the hearing, councilors will state whether they have any conflicts of interest, such as family, financial, or business relationship with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. If such potential conflict exists, the councilor will state whether he or she is without actual bias. Councilors will also state whether they have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have any independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. If any councilors have had such contacts or independent knowledge, they will disclose the substance of that contact or knowledge. During the time for public testimony, a witness may challenge the impartiality of any councilor and may rebut the substance of a councilor's knowledge of the facts. The councilor in question may respond to such a challenge. Councilor Piscineri, it is now appropriate to ask if any councilors wish to declare any potential conflicts of interest or actual conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, or independent knowledge of relevant facts.
Thank you, Ms. Kratz. So I'll start with Councilor, I'll start over here. Steer, do you have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest?
No ex parte contact, no conflict of interest. Thank you.
Councilor Moe.
No conflict of interest.
Councilor Van Gordon.
No ex parte contacts, no conflicts of interest.
Councilor Moore.
Same, no ex parte contacts and no conflict of interest.
And Councilor Woodrow.
No ex parte contact and no conflicts of interest, no independent knowledge.
Thank you. And I too have no ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. I think, Andy, it's your turn up to bat, sir. Neil, do we have him in queue?
We're working on getting him.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, counselors. And I can share my camera if anyone wants to see me, that's fine. Hello. I'm just going to bring up bear with me, I'm going to work with the controls here to bring up the PowerPoint slides for this. Hopefully everyone can see what I'm seeing right now. And I'm going to start the slideshow. And I'll try to be careful because sometimes some of the controls also mute the microphone. So what we should be looking at right now is a location map of the site that's commonly referred to as Marcola Meadows. And it's at the northwest corner of Marcola Road at 28th Street. The property is a little over 100 acres. Vacant up until this year, mostly vacant and used for agriculture. However, staff is pleased to advise that initial construction is beginning on the first subdivision phase of 29 lots in the northeast corner near 31st and W Street. So there's some activity underway on this property currently. So this is a air photo of the site. One notable feature is there is a drainage ditch that runs east-west through the site, commonly known as the Pierce Ditch, and it conveys stormwater from areas to the east across the site and then southward to Marcola Road, where it runs underneath Marcola Road. So that drainage feature is one of the defining features of this particular property. The rest is relatively flat and has been used for agriculture up until recently. So the site is identified in the Metro Plan diagram, and I've identified it with a little arrow. If you can see my cursor here, it is a nodal development area. It is a combination of commercial and medium density residential designation. The nodal development area has a notch in it, and that represents a former commercial site that was identified in about 2008 for a major retailer, big box store, so to speak, home improvement center that was excluded from the nodal development area. So that's the reason for this kind of a exclusionary piece of the property. The applicant is proposing to redesignate most of the site to medium density residential and keep some commercial designation in the southwest corner, about 9 acres, and a 1 acre site approximately just west of the intersection of 28th Street and Marcola Road. Currently, this is the land use designation, and the crosshatch pattern represents the nodal development area. So roughly the northern half currently is medium density residential designation, and roughly the southern half, it's a little bit less than half acreage wise, is the commercial designation. And you can see the nodal development area kind of wraps around a former commercial site that had been identified in previous plans. So the applicant is proposing to change it predominantly to medium density residential to facilitate not only housing, but also institutional land use on the site. The existing commercial designation in the southwest corner is being retained because it's compatible with a planned church site at that location. Concurrent with the redesignation, the applicant's looking to change the zoning. Currently, the northern half approximately is medium density residential zoning, and the southern half, it's a little less than half, about 45.6 acres, is mixed use commercial zoning. The applicant is proposing to change the southern portion of the mixed use commercial zoning to a combination of medium density residential, which would be in the southeast quadrant, adjacent to Marcola Road at 28th Street, public land and open space, about a little over 15 acres to facilitate a public school at that location, community commercial zoning at the southwest edge, again, to accommodate a planned church site on the property, and approximately a 1 acre piece of community commercial between 28th Street and the planned school site for some type of neighborhood commercial, perhaps a convenience store, something of that nature. So currently, there is a development master plan in place for this property, and this provides a kind of an overview of what was previously the planned and the most recent configuration of planned development on the site. A combination of single detached and attached homes in the northern half of the property, and then higher density residential combined with a shopping commercial village type of environment in the southern portion. And this is the configuration that had been established in 2008 and had been subsequently modified slightly a few times in order to keep the master plan essentially viable during a prolonged period of no activity on the site. And there was a change of, as many councilors may be aware, there's been changes of ownership, and it was bank owned for a period of time, and now a private developer with aspirations to develop the site has purchased the property and is looking to make changes. Hence the reason that the Metro Plan Amendment and zone changes are before you this evening. So the applicant has provided a conceptual master plan that would be the next step arising from a successful comprehensive plan amendment and zone change should that occur. They've identified, as I just had indicated, a church site for one of the Springfield local churches has identified this as a potential site for them to relocate at the southwest corner of the property. Springfield Public Schools have identified the need for a school to serve this neighborhood, and they are on board with a approximately 15-acre school site that would be at the corner of Marcola Road and what would be the extension of V Street, and additional multi-unit residential, arguably needed housing in the community further to the east at the intersection of Marcola Road and 28th Street. So these constitute the planned changes to the configuration of the property, and this is what would be arising as a next step should this comprehensive plan designation and zone change be successful. So this has been advertised a number of times, as councilors are aware. The planned public hearing before the Planning Commission was postponed because of the Holiday Farm fire. And so we had to renotice everyone that was in the vicinity, post new notices on the site and also in the newspaper. I personally have been in contact with a number of people on the kind of the periphery that are curious about what's happening, want to keep informed and apprised of the development plans. But as of right now, there have been no voiced or written objections to this proposal. So there has been no public comment, either neutral or negative, provided for the proposal up to this point. So I know that the applicant has a presentation that they will add as well, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for this proposal to amend the Metro Plan diagram and also the Springfield zoning map.
So I guess I have a question about the Planning Commission's exhibits. One of the things that I noticed is that that it was a split decision, but I didn't see the minutes from that meeting. Could you give maybe us a little bit of flavor about what the concern from, or of that discussion was? Because I'd be really interested in seeing what their take was, because somebody clearly had some concerns.
So the Planning Commission voted 5-2 in favor of the recommendation City Council. The dissenting views expressed concerns about the reduction of commercial designation and commercial zoning on the site, recognizing that there may be opportunities. It may not be an immediate opportunity for commercial development on the site, but the planned changes to residential essentially closes the door to what could be an opportunity a little ways down the road. Staff understands that the developer wants to move fairly quickly in developing this property. So, you know, the southern edge of the site is in the, you know, the 3 to 5 year time frame. So not looking to hold or speculate on commercial land where there is no perceived market, according to the developer. And that was the reason for advancing these plans. That was the concerns expressed by the two commissioners, was primarily its effect on the commercial land base for the city.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sherry.
Marilee had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Go ahead,
okay.
Marilee.
I'm waving at a blank screen. I was curious as to how many residences this is going to total up to be.
So
do we know?
We do know with the planned changes to the designation to medium density residential, it would be between 750 to over 1,000 dwelling units. Depending upon the type and configuration of multi-unit residential housing at the southeast corner, there's a couple of sites that could be developed there. They could be multi-story and any number of different housing forms, apartments, possibly assisted living, retirement, townhouses. There's a variety of different housing forms that could be accommodated there, and that would affect the unit count. But it does lead to a net increase of residential dwelling units on the property.
So that would, the 750 to 1,000, is that just the property we're talking about now? Or does that include the northern part as well?
That's in totality, the full
Okay.
build out of 100+ acres.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And go ahead, Councilor Moore, followed by Councilor Steer.
So my question has to do with, we're talking about those single family residences. Are they looking at possibly changing some of those because of the state ruling that's coming down about higher density in these single family lots? Or is that a consideration at this point in time? Or do you know if that's a consideration?
I don't know if that's a consideration. I know that the developer has intentionally designed the lot pattern as modest sized lots. So the density is relatively high, although it is single detached dwellings.
Right.
There would be, based on some of the lot sizes, some accessory dwelling units would be allowable, but they have provided no indication that they want to pursue duplex, attached home type units on the single detached lots that are being created right now. That would be an option to them when it comes into effect, which will either be upon adoption of the development code rewrite or House Bill 2001 in, I think, mid 2022. So my estimation based on the information we have from the developers, they will be well underway to completing the northern portion of the site in a couple of years, and they may not choose to await the outcome of changes in the regulations that would allow for different housing types.
Okay, and then
That's speculation.
right, and I realize you're speculating. But I did also notice that it had been marked. If you would go back to that map, it says affordable housing. Is there any kind of, are we asking for them to include any affordable housing? Or is this all going to be market? Let's see, where did I see that? I saw multifamily residential affordable housing options. So are we as a city asking for them to address the affordable housing issues, or are they all going to be market? Where are we at with that?
We don't know. The developer has submitted for a meeting with staff to talk about the multi-unit residential site. That meeting has not yet been scheduled, and it'll be just a project scoping meeting. And I guess the difference between affordable and low income you know, and other types of housing, there's nuances there. It may be affordable relative to other units within the neighborhood, and it may be affordable relative to, you know, the kind of the predominant single family housing neighborhoods that are represented in this area. So it's not exactly clear. Staff's understanding and expectation would be that it'll be market rate, not subsidized or you know, agency run or anything like that. So we may find out more information after meeting with the developer a couple weeks from now and get an idea whether they or possibly a third party might be the developer of these multi-unit sites, and then there'll be more information as to the nature of those units that'll be created.
Okay, so what this first reading tonight is asking us to change the zoning, however, to that multi-density zoning, correct?
Correct. Yes, to medium density residential designation and zoning, which would allow for a wide variety of housing forms, everything from a single detached unit all the way up to like a low-rise apartment type of unit. And the developer, through their master plan, has identified this as being on that sort of spectrum, the more high density number of units, probably closer to the 20 to 28 units per net acre that would be allowable in medium density residential, as opposed to the 14 units per acre in the lower end.
So as a city, we are not asking for any restrictions for low income or affordable housing, or can we ask for that?
Through this action, I don't believe that can be done, but through future actions, when they come forward with plans for, you know, specific detailed plans for site plan development, and through their master plan that they'll need to modify, there may be the opportunity for dialogue with the developer to look at some of those opportunities, and also to convey council's desire, should that be council's desire, to have a component of these types of housing forms within this development.
Okay, so then my last question has to do with the school site. I'm assuming that that would also include a playground and maybe some open fields, and that looks like a very large site.
Correct.
And so in the past, Willamette Lane has partnered with schools and created park type settings. Is that the expectation, that it would not just be school district, but possibly could be partnered? And again, and this is hypothetical, but it looks like such a large piece of land, and I'm thinking that many houses, it would be nice to have some kind of a park setting nearby.
Sure. I think that the programmatic needs of Springfield Public Schools would be active play fields. Depending upon the type of school, there may be a kind of a playground of sorts. If it's a middle school, probably not. But with 15 acres, there's opportunity for shared use of fields, community use potentially. We have not heard from Willamette Lane that they're looking to partner with the school district at this location. They are looking to develop the property immediately north of the E-Web pathway there that borders Briggs. And there may be an opportunity to develop some of the open space in the corner of that school site there. But as to this school, it's still fairly early in the planning of this school site. And so Willamette Lane is aware of what's happening. And they've been to the table along the way. And so we may hear more as the school plans get more fleshed out.
Right. Thank you.
Councilor Pictionary.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, this is Christina Krause. I just wanted to provide a little bit of information in response to Councilor Moore's question about affordable housing. I just want to make sure that the council knows that for the future master plan modification, that would have to be based on criteria of approval. The council does not currently have adopted any criteria of approval that could be used to require affordable housing, as in housing that is set for specific income levels. There are a lot of optional programs that a developer can pursue where they get waivers of application fees or other types of programs the city has adopted, and then affordable housing is a requirement for those types of programs. But for the master plan itself, we don't have any way to require affordable housing as part of just that application on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Go ahead, Councilor Van Gordon.
So Christina, can you just clarify for us, like right now we're not being asked to make policy recommendations or policy decisions. All we're being asked is if the applicant meets whatever the criteria to do a rezoning is.
Correct. You would be making policy decisions and recommendations to the extent that they reflect policies in the comprehensive plan about these designations and this type of action, but not other types of policies that are related to land development, but not specifically these criteria of approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And Councilor Woodrow, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Councilor Steer has his hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm glad this slide is up right now because one of the concerns that was voiced by the Planning Commission was that the additional housing that's being proposed now might crowd some of the stormwater mitigation and some of the drainage that was planned. Does staff believe that that might be a problem?
Not being a stormwater engineer, I know that the city has looked very closely at the functionality, and I'll bring this up full size so it can be, you can kind of see this corridor here. Staff has conveyed to the developer and their consulting engineer that the operation of the Pierce Ditch, because of its it carries public water across the site from off-site through this property and to the public system to the south and southwest. It needs to have some additional capacity built in. There are already, even pre-development on this site, some constraints, particularly where it makes an elbow, a 90-degree turn westbound to southbound, right at the bottom of Lock Drive cul-de-sac there. Periodically during high flows, even currently without any development on the site, there can be some water that backs up into the system and pools in the cul-de-sac vault there. So the developer is well aware of that. They have designed for additional capacity within the stormwater facilities that will be constructed on the site, and you can see that there's some open areas that have some conceptual ponding areas, and that would alleviate some of the flow during periods of high flow, and also from the neighborhood development itself to direct stormwater into facilities that can hold and store some of the overflow until it can be released into the drainage ditch so as not to cause downstream impacts. So that is of paramount concern to staff, and the developer and their team are well aware of that and will be making plans accordingly as the development continues to advance.
So is the intent to increase the capacity of the drainage ditches that they've planned?
To a certain degree, and it certainly will be, the intent will be not to impact what is currently the current rate of flow. So not to diminish it and not to exceed the maximum capacity of the flow. So basically everything has to be designed so as not to have any impact and to mitigate where there has been problem areas identified, specifically that elbow there. So for example, as the church site develops, the existing channel that will need to remain as an open conveyance channel on the site, that will be part of the planning for that development in the future should the church project advance. So some options might be areas of landscaping, areas of buffering from the neighborhood that can accommodate some of the stormwater drainage, infiltrate and prevent any impacts to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I had one quick question, if I could, please. I noticed that the road between the church and the school property, the north-south road, so is this master plan fixing the location of the roadways, both ingress and egress?
Yes, and this location of the road is consistent with the previous master plan. If I can go back to this site, what was previously shown as a roundabout, in large part because of the high amount of commercial area,
Right.
has been, I guess, arguably simplified to a more of a T intersection. And so it essentially, yes, this road intersection has been identified and will be defined not only by the zoning, but also by the parcels that the property owner has created. They did a property line adjustment and they have established this east boundary of the church site, which represents the edge of the road right of way. So that also essentially starting to fix the locations of some of these future improvements.
And so that, oh, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that it's clear for the audience that the master plan modifications are not in front of the council. Those have to be separately approved later. And so this is what they are contemplating submitting, or maybe have submitted already, but not part of what the council is deciding tonight. So there's different criteria of approval that will apply to those. So final decisions on right-of-way locations or changes to the stormwater system from the current master plan will be made as part of that separate land use decision-making process, which has other standards that apply to it.
Okay, that's what I was kind of wondering, because this is the proposed development master plan and as opposed to what's currently existing.
Correct. I wanted to show it for context because this is the logical next step that the developer is looking to make. In order to do that, that's the comprehensive plan amendment and zone change before the council this evening, which would allow them to then advance the plans to change from a predominantly commercial to more of an institutional and residential neighborhood.
Gotcha. Thank you. Is there any more questions for our staff? Okay. So at this point, is the applicant here to make a presentation? Christina, do we have any input from the applicant?
I don't have anything. If the applicant is not there in City Hall, then they don't need to provide a.
Okay. So is there anyone present in the council chambers or submitted a chat or email in advance that would like to testify?
It does not appear that we have anyone in City Hall. We do have one in City Hall. Hold on one moment.
Okay.
Okay, that's Michael's. Michelle, okay. Hold on a moment, we'll get someone.
No worries.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. All right, great. So, yeah, we're trying to get this set up here. Please bear with us. Thank you.
Can you see our screen?
We have a black, yeah, we can see your screen. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, you want to start this slideshow, really? Oh, it's PDF. Okay, great. All right, so go to the next slide. Okay, so thank you, counselors. My name is Chris Goodell. I'm a land use planner with AKS. Our address is 12965 Southwest Herman Road, Suite 100, Tualatin, Oregon, 97062. We're working on behalf of the property owner and prepared the applications that are before you here tonight. These applications are very technical in nature, and Andy did a thorough job of describing them, as well as some of the history on the property. As Andy had mentioned, construction just started on a small part of the project located in the northeast corner of the site. I don't know if you can see our cursor here, which looks like a hand. So this portion of the property right up here is the first phase of the Marcola Meadows project, and that has just started construction. As Christina and Andy mentioned, this is our conceptual master plan map that shows ideally what the owner would like to see on the property. So just sort of, I'll run down these different land uses fairly quickly, but starting with the property, the portion of the site in the southwest corner is the home to the future Northwood Christian Church. It's approximately 8 acres. This piece of the property, which is purple, is a site for a new public elementary school for the Springfield School District. It's approximately 15 acres. This portion of the property here, which is in tan, is planned to be a future multifamily residential neighborhood. And as Andy mentioned, we just submitted a request to meet and discuss this portion of the property here with city staff. And this little piece down here in commercial is slated to be or remain commercial and envisioned as being a neighborhood scaled commercial site. And the bulk of the remaining portion of the property is as was with the previous master plan, single family residential homes. In this case, these are single family detached homes, and you can see the first phase, which we mentioned, is called phase 1A, which is up here. Other portions of the first phase extend out in this direction here. And so those will be probably the next things that you'll see on the site. And there's stormwater facilities. Some of them are real small up in the corner there. There's another one there, here, and here, and a couple others that are planned even down in here. So all these phases are planned to be tied together with a street network, local streets, and the neighborhood collector street, B Street here being the highest functional class street. And as I mentioned, this portion of the site has a subdivision approval from, I think it was around December of last year that we're working on now. The rest of the site does not have subdivision approval, and as Andy mentioned, these portions of the site don't have approvals to develop yet. So the next thing that has to happen here, so this is a metro plan diagram amendment and zone change for portions of the property. But before anything can happen on any of these other portions of the property, we're working with staff on a modification to the current approved master plan for the property. And that's sort of the next step. I guess they call it the second step. And then third and fourth and fifth steps would be, for instance, site design review for the multifamily portion of the site and for the school and the church. So we're actively working on plans, or plans are being actively worked on, so far as I know, on every phase of the project. I don't know, I haven't really heard anything about the school, but it's worth mentioning that the planning commission members, the pastor and other members of the church testified in favor of the applications that are here this evening. And a member of the school district staff was present testifying in favor of the applications as well. City councilors asked a number of really good questions, and I'd like to provide a few answers here that might be helpful. One question was regarding the number of residential dwelling units on the site, and Andy was very close, if not right on. So currently, with what's being thought of is Between these subdivision, these lots for single family homes and the multifamily portion of the site is the current idea is 753 dwelling units. So Andy was right on. Another question was regarding a comment that we had in our bubble diagram, which talked about affordable housing, and I guess that's a loaded term. Affordable housing, needed housing, all those terms. I guess we were sort of using this in the general sense, like Andy described, is it would be more affordable to people starting out than would a single family detached home. So that was the idea behind calling this affordable, nothing more. So our client is looking at building the apartments himself. They do a number of multifamily projects all over the state, and so like I said, we're meeting with city staff very soon to start that process. Let's see. Oh, one question came up regarding stormwater, and I guess regarding this application, this is just for zoning, so it doesn't really define where or how stormwater works. Our engineering staff is working very closely with city engineering staff, public works staff, and that's how we've come up with this design as far as having a number of stormwater facilities throughout the site. And we're currently having conversations with them about the pier stitch and its function and how to make sure that it doesn't get any worse with these projects that we're doing here. So that was really what I wanted to convey to you, but I'm here with other members of the project team, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from council? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Do we need any, Andy, do you need to respond to any of his testimony or wish to?
No, I think it filled in some of the points that I didn't have the specific figures and knowledge in front of me here. So I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you for helping to flesh out my responses a bit.
Thank you. So is there any questions of the applicant or staff from the council? Seeing none, I would like to ask the council, would you like me to close the public hearing and or the public record, or continue the hearing and hold the record open to another date?
Do you need it in the form of a motion?
Good question, Christina.
I would prefer a motion to close the public hearing and written record for us.
I move that we close the public hearing and the written record.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor by roll call vote.
Councillor Van Gordon.
Yes.
Councillor Moe.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Stair.
Yes.
Councillor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councillor Pictionary.
Yes. Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Next item.
Next item is your second public hearing, fiscal year 21 supplemental budget number 1 and appropriations transfer. Resolution number 2, a resolution adjusting resources and requirements in the following funds: general, street, special revenue, transient room tax, community development, building code, fire local option levy, police local option levy, Bancroft redemption, bond sinking, development assessment capital, development projects, street capital, sanitary sewer operations, regional wastewater operations, regional wastewater capital, ambulance, storm drainage operations, Booth Kelly, regional fiber consortium, insurance, vehicle and equipment, and SDC administration, and authorizing the transfer of appropriations within the general fund from contingency expense to development and public works operating expense, and within the community development fund from operating expense to capital project expense. Neil Obringer is here for the staff report.
Good evening, council. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Again, this is Neil Obringer from the Finance Department. I'm here with the first supplemental budget and appropriations transfer of FY21. Staff requests that the council hold a public hearing on the proposed changes to the budget and either adopt or not adopt the attached resolution. And after the public hearing, I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. I would like to open the public hearing for anybody wishing to testify on this code adoption or resolution.
Councilor, we have one person to speak. We have no one in the council chambers on this item, but we do have one person online, and I can bring them up here.
Okay, thank you.
And our speaker is Holly Shaper. And Holly, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Holly Shaper, and I live in Ward 2. So I've lived in Springfield for 15 years. I've watched the transformation happen downtown. I've benefited directly from the interactions with the incredible library staff and historic planning staff and transportation planning staff and building permitting staff. I am deeply concerned that we are going to see a drop in available services for residents as a direct result of police actions and lawsuits that stem from them. I say this in reference to the City Council meeting on July 6th of this year, item number 8, which states that due to several large police and jail claims in recent years, our general liability deductible will change from a $100,000 annual aggregate deductible to a $250,000 per claim deductible for police and jail claims. Additionally, unfavorable police and jail claims costs were cited as the reason that no other proposals were received this year. I have given public comment, sent emails, and reached out to my counselor and others about the gravity of this situation. Now I have a question for each of you, one to consider when considering the city budget. Which services or employees are you willing to lose in order to allow our police department to continue to act in the way that is described in the 2014 Umenhofer lawsuit, 2014 Nickel lawsuit, 2018 Baroni lawsuit, 2019 McKee tort notice, 2019 Stone lawsuit, 2020 Kenny lawsuit, 2020 Chaplin lawsuit, and is displayed at protests and during interactions with residents and visitors of Springfield, including the July 29th protest in Thurston? For the first $250,000 claim deductible, what service are you willing to lose? The library? For the second $250,000 claim deductible, are you willing to cut back on your IT staff? For the third $250,000 claim deductible, which beloved staff member are you willing to lose? It is the responsibility of City Council and the City Manager to provide oversight. We need council and city leadership to make the choice to be actively involved in managing our police department. We cannot afford to lose these crucial staff and services because one of our city departments has lost control of itself and our leadership is refusing to take the reins. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Do we have any more speakers from the public in regards to this action?
Councilor, for public hearing number 2, it does not appear we have anyone else.
Thank you very much. So we're no one else in queue that we might be missing then?
No, Councilor, it appears that is the last speaker.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd close the public hearing and open it up for a motion.
I move that we approve the supplemental budget number 1 and appropriations transfer.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded, so that would be the to adopt a resolution number 2.
Yes.
Okay, and that was your second too, Sean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to take a vote by roll call, Neil.
Councilor Van Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Stair,
Yes.
Counselor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, and thank you. And next item, please.
Your next item is your third public hearing of the evening. Use of recreational vehicles as temporary housing, resolution number 3, a resolution allowing recreational vehicles as temporary housing. Sandy Belson is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. And you had a work session on this item previously, and tonight is a public hearing. And this is a hearing to get public input on the idea of allowing RV occupancy on private land. And so this would be either in conjunction with a single family home or duplex, or in a parking lot of a commercial building, a house of worship or church, or some other public entity. So the guidelines that are presented to you tonight have been reformatted a bit, and they include the requirement that the RV must be roadworthy, that no structure shall be connected to the RV, all personal items shall be kept in the RV or otherwise screened from any public right-of-way. And in response to your discussion last time, we've listed that property owners may not charge rent, but may ask the RV occupants to contribute toward utilities. There are requirements to address sanitation facilities, how you would provide electrical connections, and that garbage service must be required. So those are the high points of the draft temporary guidelines. And so if council proceeds with this resolution, it would allow this type of RV occupancy until next spring. We would come back to you before summer recess, and at that time you would evaluate how this is working, if you want to continue it or not, and if you want to make it permanent. So with that, I will conclude my comments unless you have any questions.
I have a question.
Okay, go for it. Counselor Woodrow.
Yes, you mentioned parking, allowing RVs in parking lots or in near public buildings. Do we have a limit on that, or?
As proposed, there is not, but we could add a limit if you thought that that would be helpful.
I'm just thinking if it's, I don't know. I'm open to discussing that. I'm not sure I want to see a dozen in a parking lot. So I'm open to some discussion on that. I don't know. I think it would be helpful if we had a limit, but I don't know what that would be.
And is that all you had, Marilee?
Yeah, I'm open to talking about it before
Okay.
we approve this. I'd like to talk about that.
Okay, and I saw Counselor Moore with her hand up.
So, and I spoke with you, Sandy, about this, and my understanding is we're not actually changing code. What we're actually doing is suspending the enforcement of our current code. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so the idea is that if you tried this out and it was working successfully and meeting a need beyond the temporary emergency, that you could incorporate some changes into the code that would outright allow it.
And that is why when we talked last time about establishing a permit to allow that, we've taken that out of the language because in fact, we're not, as a city, really overseeing it. We're just suspending code enforcement. But if in fact there were a problem, in the neighborhood, somebody had a complaint, that we could, in fact, then enforce our code as it stands. So even as Mary Lee is asking about the number of RVs that would be allowed in a parking lot, if we saw all of a sudden that there were 10 RVs lined up, and that we could then say, I don't know, it seems a little loosey-goosey to me, but that's just my opinion.
So in response, I would say that we would continue to take action to enforce other aspects of our codes, such as the noise, sanitation, nuisance, or other public health and safety code violations. I'm not sure if Jim Donovan is available, but he is our code enforcement supervisor, and he might be able to respond more specifically. But we wouldn't enforce something just because somebody complained about an RV. There would have to be some other corresponding concern that touched on some of those other code violation issues.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And I had one quick question, unless someone else has other questions. Sandy, I thought I read when we first were looking at this that the question of a permit or the St. Vincent de Paul's managing the placement and the location of these RVs, did that go away?
So I think that's what Councillor Moore was referring to. So you had talked about that during your last meeting. My understanding was that by the end of the discussion, you had decided not to go with the permit approach and changing the code at this time. So if you decide that you do want to use a permit approach, that would require a code amendment.
So that would be quite a bit more involved than to just pass this and see how it rolls, basically.
Correct. We
Okay.
would need to actually prepare some code amendments for your consideration.
Okay, and we can, if need be, look at that down the road and shore it up if we need to.
Correct.
Okay. So any other questions? Go ahead, Sherry.
Also referring to Mary Lee's question, I'd like to hear other counselor input as well. Should we limit the number of RVs that might be parked in a church parking lot, for instance, or should we just leave it to, I'd like some other input. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of uncharted territory.
Thanks, Jerry. I didn't know either.
Leonard.
Thanks. Isn't the number of vehicles in a church parking lot already limited by the overnight parking program?
Correct. We allow up to 3 through the overnight parking program. And so any church that was wanting to participate through that overnight parking program and have it managed by one of our nonprofits and have the porta potties paid for and the trash service provided, that's limited to 3. In this scenario, the city is not involved in financially providing any of the support for the trash collection or the sanitation. That must be provided by the property owner. And so at this point, the guideline is whatever you want it to be in terms of the number you would allow.
Okay. I would have no problem with allowing 3 RVs on a church parking lot at a time and just allow the current limit to govern that.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Councillor Van Gordon.
I'd be good with that. That seems like a number we've used in the past.
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm comfortable with that too.
Yeah, I was going to say that our pre-existing ordinances cover that, so I'm good with not moving or changing those. or programs, I should say. So that said,
Steve had his hand up.
Yeah, Steve had his hand up.
I'm sorry,
Joe.
what?
Hi, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I was looking at the ordinance.
That's okay. I've been advocating for this use of RVs in the city for quite a while. Ever since the virus issue came up, I knew there's going to be a lot of homeless families out there that need a place to stay. And if they had a motorhome or a camper, they could park to their father-in-laws, mother-in-laws. That would help a lot of those families. Now, since we've had the fires up the river, we have even more use for it. So it's a good thing, and I suggest we get going on it because I think that's important to put it in use now.
Thank you, Steve. And Christina, if you're still here, was this a open, something that I needed to open for public comment and then close it, or is this something we just move forward?
This is not a public hearing.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you. I was thinking I might have messed up. All right.
Well, my understanding is that you did want to have a public hearing and it was listed under public hearings on your agenda.
Yes, this is a public hearing.
That's what I
correctly. I apologize.
Okay, so backpedaling a little bit here was that we should have read the resolution and then open it for public hearing, close the public hearing, and then comments or motions from the council, correct?
Yeah, so if you can open the public hearing, we have 3 members of the public that are ready to speak.
Okay, so let's do that.
Okay,
Open the public hearing for comment.
All right, thank you. Our first speaker is Chris McAllister, and Chris is followed by June Fothergill. Chris, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Dear members of council, members of the public, my name is Chris McAllister and I reside on 12th Street in Ward 3. I come before you on the issue of using recreational vehicles as temporary housing. This is not a conversation new to our town nor this body. The last time this body considered modifications to our code permanently, the council work session was directed to do nothing for those not already served. When the word of the qualifying no caught fire this fall, we have this measure. Our people are our people, and you will not find me resisting this resolution. I will, however, ask this body to reflect on how different some of you spoke or did not speak when it was not fire victims, but abuse victims, substance use victims, and economic refugees from rural communities who look to you for long-term recovery. Councillor Moe was the sole voice that truly sought something over a dozen suggestions to be carved out for our folks, and I thank him sincerely for putting the support of people before prevention of stabilizing activity. Councillor Stair was out of town. I very much welcome this resolution and find it to be one of the first in almost a decade that sincerely puts the process in front of, not behind the need. There needs to be continued leadership on this item, and those like the commercial property waiver, and that they are not sunsetted for convenience or community exporting, police escalation, and insensitive code that does not reflect our invoking of home for a majority of those who are in these vehicles outside of the fire times. You may recall we did not serve this community in the height of the COVID need, despite Councillor Moe's insistence. Egan is not going to be supported like it has been previously, and I fear that we need to do something greater than what we've ever seen in terms of response with COVID, the fires, and winter relief. You have options with our neighboring governments, but the main 2 points missing is our part and us. We are missing from the conversation locally, and we can do better, City of Springfield, and the ball is in our court. Please don't limit us down to 3. So everybody else has 6. We need to serve our people in the numbers needed, not in what's convenient. Our code is broken, our options are limited, and our people deserve better. We need a leader who will lead, not wait for the need to grow so much that we then concede. I yield the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is June Fothergill, followed by Jennifer Smith. And Reverend Fothergill, your microphone should be open.
Hello, my name is June Fothergill. I live at 317 30th Street in the Brentwood Estates, one of those multifamily places that was built a long time ago, or 10 or more years ago. Yes, I'm in favor of you doing this. I'm very excited that you're going to be doing it. It's good to see something happening for our in-house folks. Many people turn to try to have recreational vehicles or some kind of trailer to try to find a place to be safe and to be warm. But they have a hard time finding a place to put them. So I'm hoping that this will open up some more opportunities for people to have safe housing. And thank you for doing it. I hope that we can continue to work together to find ways to have safe housing for everyone, all the residents in our community, and let's work together on it. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Next speaker.
Councilor, it looks like our last speaker is Jennifer Smith. And Jennifer, your microphone should be, you just need to unmute it on your side. There you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Jen Smith, and I'm just really glad to be able to speak on this issue on behalf of a friend who's currently living in their RV in Springfield area. So I know that we have many, friends and family that are affected by COVID and by the fires and by losing their jobs. And I just really want to advocate for allowing this private and public use of space, especially during the pandemic time, but also that there are people who are in crisis all the time, not just right now. So I just beseech you to keep them in your minds as well. I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else, Neil?
Councilor, it appears that those are all the speakers, and we have no one on this item within City Hall either.
Thank you, sir. Then I would like to close the public hearing on this matter and would entertain a motion or council discussion. Okay, we got Councilor Moore with her hand up.
Well, I just had a question because the last time we spoke about this, I said, well, I could possibly put a mobile home or a trailer or something next to our house. And so I said, well, I would recuse myself. But then I realized that that's a possibility. Just as many things that we pass, we could add an AUD or what, accessory dwelling unit. So I'm wondering if I do need to recuse myself. I guess that's my question. I'm asking that of attorney, somebody.
Christina?
I think I can help answer, and then Mary Bridget can add anything I might have left out.
Okay.
The standard is that if a decision that you make could or would have a financial impact on you or your business or your relative's business. In this case, I believe the resolution provides that it's on a no rent basis. And so therefore I would read it as not affecting anyone's financial interest. If you were talking about rental units, then you could have a potential conflict of interest if you might take advantage of it in the future, or an actual conflict if you would take advantage of it. That's my understanding of how the state has applied that to accessory dwelling units, for example, which is sort of an analogy here. But since it's a rent-free basis, you could, counselor couldn't make money off of this, and neither could your relatives or businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 3.
And I saw, well, hold on, I saw Steve Moe's hand up.
That's fine. I'll second it.
Oh, okay. So it's been
Sorry,
moved and seconded. All's in favor, signify at roll call.
Councilor Van Gordon.
Yes.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Moore.
Yes.
Councilor Stair.
Yes.
Councilor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Yes.
Councilor Pictionary, I just want to ask a clarifying question. So are you, is that adopted as presented, or were you wanting to include the limit of 3 RVs in the parking lots?
I think we were going with as presented.
Yep.
And
Just confirming.
Yes,
you.
that's my impression. Thank you for asking. So it was a motion was adopting resolution number 3. Okay, and voted upon unanimously. So next item is going to be business from the audience. And I would like to say, I know there's many folks that would like to speak tonight, and I just want to let folks know and be rest assured that there has been a lot of energy and concern amongst the citizens in regards to this mayor appointment issue, an interim mayor appointment issue, all of that. And that it has all been, all of our, I can speak for all the counselors, that we listen to what you have to say, including myself, especially myself. And I appreciate those comments and those honesty, those honest opinions of what folks are feeling. And I think that I would like to invite you to please listen to our conversation after the business from the audience, and we in our discussion for this on this topic. And again, please keep that in mind, that we have heard you. And so we'll go ahead and start with the business from the audience. And Neil, first of all, I'd like to ask how many are in queue.
Councilor Piscineri, it looks like we have 6, maybe 7 speakers.
Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and go with the, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. The comments will be limited to 20 minutes. And so I go ahead and start it. Neil, thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor, our first speaker is Thomas Lawrence. And Thomas, I'm going to just unmute your microphone here. You may have to do it on your side as well.
All right, we good?
Yes.
All right, Thomas Lawrence, Ward 1. I kind of just want to speak to the feeling that I get as I've listened to the last month or two of all these meetings. And what I really see the most is a lack of urgency on any of the stuff being discussed. And I get that it's difficult. I get there's huge things to take care of. I understand that there's policy and procedure and all that. But at the same time, we have things that we need to fix. It's July 29th for the Thurston protest. We haven't heard anything much at all yet. The temporary housing and all that, as someone else mentioned, we have that crisis year round, not just in the cold weather time, but yet this whole work meeting was basically the whole first hour was just, we'll come back to that. Thurston protest, nothing seems to be moving forward. And I feel like it's kind of the definition of the privilege that a lot of the people here doing this stuff are sharing and feeling, is that this needs to get done. And all we keep hearing in these council meetings is we'll get to it next time. We'll talk about that next time, arguing over the amount of time people can talk and speak. And just everybody, we need to get this done. People's lives are at stake. People's livelihoods are at stake. Everything is at stake. And we have been here now for 2.5 hours. And about 2 hours of that feels like really unproductive, wasted time, unpreparedness, people not really knowing what direction they want to go, comments about how many RVs can be there as if that would be an eyesore. That's at least how I perceived that comment. These are people's lives that need help, and it's not happening. And all we keep hearing is we'll get to it next time. We'll talk about it again next time. The council has an opportunity to appoint a new mayor, and we're then going to potentially just wait 2 more months because we already waited too long to fix this issue. It's already been 2 months, so we'll just go ahead and push it for 2 more months. That's ridiculous. People should have a chance to vote on this, especially when some of the people who are running for it are not necessarily the best people for it. I'll just leave that at that. This is like the 5th meeting in a row now that I've been to, and it feels like we have not had a single successful resolution, a single piece of helpful information, a single actual action step taken. It has been a whole bunch of deliberation, and we'll get to it eventually. Can we really try to get some of this stuff done? We need help. We need help. More people are tuning in than ever, I'm imagining. I would guess that you don't typically have 7 speakers when everything's going well, or however many people listening. There's a reason for that, and that's because people are looking to you to finally help us, and nothing seems to be going anywhere. we'll just get to it in 2 months, and in January, we'll just go ahead and take it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And I can say with just a little bit of an excuse that government time sometimes is surprisingly snail slow, and we try to keep it going as fast as we can, and I apologize. Next speaker, Neil.
The next speaker is Dana Herkett. And Dana.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is
Hi,
Dana, and I live in Ward 1. At these meetings, the citizens have been talking a lot about loss of institutional trust and what it takes to rebuild that trust. And let me just say, the decision to appoint a new mayor from a very shallow pool of applicants with very little time made for consideration of substantial public input does not help rebuild trust with the community. I'd also like to add that Councillor Pictionary, who has submitted an application for mayoral appointment, is on the Brady list for lying during the course of a 2017 investigation into his financial double dipping. He has been flagged as compromising any investigation he is involved with and deemed unable to take an oath and tell the truth. This is a big deal. These are not credentials that are appropriate for a candidate eligible to be our mayor for any period of time. I implore you to please seriously consider this when casting your vote for the mayoral appointment. Your decisions as city councilors do not occur in a vacuum. They have real, lasting consequences for real people and for our city. The consequences of voting for Councillor Pictionary will be to only further and deepen the institutional mistrust already felt by many citizens of Springfield. In our current socio-political climate, where citizens have been increasingly expressing their concerns regarding police conduct and accountability, a vote for Councillor Pictionary would be a betrayal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Next speaker, please.
Council, the next speaker is Chris McAllister. And Chris, your microphone should be unmuted.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks. Members of the council, Chris McAllister, Ward 3. First of all, I'd like to say, hear Holly. Her words were strong, yet, like usual, we speak and we are not heard. There's no comment. Our government is missing. We want to hear how these decisions are made, what is going on, and when our voices matter. Mayor Lundberg stepping down is a big deal. She stepped down for her own personal reasons. Her son's actions are not her actions, but it left a vacuum. Our people spoke in the last election for the people who stood to be counted. And that said, we need to actually reach out and understand where our community is at. For years, we've asked, listen to us, take care of our poor, take care of our weak, help our displaced, help our struggling businesses. Yet we speak and there's no comment. There's only votes and process and scheduling and rescheduling and votes and process. We need to have responsive, reactive, and proactive government. We need to have our voices restored so the trust can be built. At a recent protest at City Hall, there were weaponized shields. There were screws put through pieces of wood, and these quote unquote signs were built like riot shields. Yet there was no process for that. There was no way to say, hey, why do you have weaponized people on this site trying to say that all lives matter? It doesn't show that all lives matter when people are allowed to have weapons that say nice slogans but are sharp and used to prove that we are not welcome to conversations that are different. We are not welcome to people who are different in this community. And I think that one of the ways to be able to show that that's not true is to start speaking after people speak to you, to show that you hear, to actually draft ideas that are meaningful, that know that we need better. I trust and work with almost all of you. The ones that we don't get to hear from are the ones who we can't build trust with. You know who you are when you've been down to the shelters, when you've helped take people to things that they need, when you've donated to causes, and when you give time. If you don't know what's going on the streets of Springfield, then maybe you should come down. Egan's not the only answer, and neither is these votes in this process. Please be of the people, for the people. have an election, change the charter, or pick someone outside of the group here. Represent all of your wards proudly and then run in 22. We need something different, not the same old, same old. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next speaker, Neil.
Counselor, the next speaker is Holly Shaper. And Holly, just give me a moment here to get to your microphone. Okay, you should be able to unmute. Holly, is that working for you? Okay. We're having a little trouble with Holly's microphone, it appears, so we'll go to the next speaker, and Holly, then we'll come back to you. The next speaker is Jennifer Smith. And Jen, just a moment. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Smith. I'm a past Springfield homeowner and Springfield real estate investor. I'm a past precinct captain for the Republican Party of Lane County. I'm currently living in rural Lane County near the Springfield Eugene metro area. Members of the council, any decision to appoint Joe Piscineri as mayor, who is well known to the community as an ex-sheriff's deputy and Brady lister, at a time when the most controversial and expensive issue facing the city of Springfield are Springfield Police Department's excessive use of force lawsuits and even more pending legal action, seems like it would send the wrong message to community members. This is a move that would obviously lead to further division in Springfield. For this reason, Councilor Piscineri, I urge you to withdraw your name from the running. And councilors, I urge you to choose someone who's better equipped to provide impartial leadership and to unify our city during this civil and human rights crisis. I also note that this decision is being considered with very little publicity or opportunity for public comment. I urge you to rethink your approach and to open this position up to leaders in the community who are better qualified immediately, and they be transparent while you interview them, or that you amend the city charter to allow for the public to vote in January. In closing, please, for the sake of Springfield, vote no on Joe tonight. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next speaker, Neil.
Okay, if you don't mind, we'll see if we can get Holly's microphone back up.
Hello,
That's
can
fine.
you hear me?
Yes, Holly, go ahead.
We hear you, Holly.
All right. Good evening. My name is Holly Shaper and I live in Ward 2. So tonight you will be appointing our next mayor, someone who will forever have held that title and will have been appointed to the highest office in the city by your votes alone. I would urge you to consider who comports themselves in a mayoral way with honesty, integrity, and empathy, who treats others fairly and with respect, regardless of their circumstances. Additionally, the subject of police accountability has repeatedly come up in the last several months. First, there was the historic wrongful death settlement in July, followed by the settlement with the former lieutenant in September. Both of these settlements cost taxpayers significant amounts of money. In our future, we have the independent investigation and any additional lawsuits brought as a result of the treatment of peaceful protesters by SPD. Clearly, police accountability is a big pending issue from both community trust and financial well-being perspectives. If you are committed to rebuilding trust and making progress on police accountability, I also urge you not to appoint Councilor Piscineri, who was placed on the DA's Brady list for lying during an investigation into his own misdeeds. He was found by the district attorney to have likely committed theft in the second or third degree and official misconduct in the first degree. So, during a time of unprecedented crises and very low institutional trust, does it make sense to vote to appoint a former deputy sheriff who resigned in disgrace after being placed on the Brady list and who failed to even mention police accountability in his application? Would this appointment help the continued efforts to rebuild trust, or would it destroy any momentum you have gained and indicate that you are just fine with the status quo? It is beyond imagination that you aren't currently considering this while also trying to figure out how much taxpayer money the city will be paying to end the lawsuit brought by another Brady-listed individual, current SPD officer Ryan Stone. And all of this one day after the Washington Post's front page story detailing the toxic culture within SPD, which allowed for a traffic stop to escalate in a brutal and unnecessary way, ultimately leading to the SPD's crisis intervention training officer killing Stacey Kenny. Springfield needs a mayor with integrity, honesty, and empathy, one who will take action to implement real police accountability. Please choose a mayor with stated priorities appropriate for the myriad of issues facing us. Please choose a mayor with values and ethics deserving of the title. Please choose a mayor who will move this city in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Neil, do you have anyone else?
We have 3 speakers remaining. Your next speaker is June Fothergill. And June, your microphone should be ready.
Thank you.
Hi,
June
June.
Fothergill, I spoke to you earlier and I forgot to say something, and I'm not going to say much about the mayor decision. How about that? But what I would like to say is that I think it's very important not to limit the number of RVs. I think every property owner will make their own limit based upon the needs of their property, and we can trust them to do that. And you don't need to take care of that. Please don't do that. Thank you. I know you decided you did vote for it the way it was, but don't do it down the road either. It's not necessary. Because we will look at our property and we'll say, this is what we can do. This is what we can't do. And every property owner will do that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, June. And we can make modifications down the road. We're always open for that. Next speaker, Neil.
Next speaker is Elizabeth Utterbeck. And Elizabeth, if you unmute, your microphone should be ready. There you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie Utterback, and I live in Ward 3. This is going to sound funny, but I want to tell you about a trip I made to the grocery store a couple of months back. So I get there, and I realize I forgot to grab a mask from home. It was okay because there was a crumpled up one in the back seat of my car. I put it on, and while I'm shopping, I notice my throat becomes irritated, and I notice a smell that seems faintly memorable, but I just can't place it. And as I'm checking it out, it hits me. This was the mask I was wearing weeks earlier at a protest where wasp spray was deployed. I wasn't close to where it happened. It was more than 15 feet away from me, but that's exactly what the smell was. Then I thought about what it must be like to be sprayed head on, what it would be like if it got in my eyes and directly on the skin of my face. I think about what it would be like if that happened because I believe Black Lives Matter, what it would be like if that happened in front of police and no assistance offered or justice sought, what it would be like if I heard the police make excuses for not taking action, what it would be like if when it was reported to the Springfield Police Advisory Committee, the committee said they do not oversee the police, and what it would be like later to hear from the city council that they don't either. To put it frankly, this exercise of putting myself in others' shoes, which I consider to be an important quality for my electeds, by the way, angered me, because this is a true story, and the aggressors continually intimidate us, and they continue to do so with the assistance of SPD. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I can send you a picture of the police collaborating with these dangerous people in front of Thurston High School at this past weekend's truck parade, which was on Main Street. You know, the street that is really dangerous, where Chief Lewis doesn't want people to demonstrate, and where these trucks proceeded to run red lights anyways. These quote patriots will continue to ramp up their intimidation and violence until council takes a firm stand. Taking a firm stand means holding the police accountable and doing so bravely and publicly. I'm angry that council designed a process where ex-sheriff's deputy Councilor Piscineri was able to put his name forward to be considered for the mayoral appointment, even though he was found by the DEA to be so untruthful that his testimony wouldn't hold up in court if he was called to be a witness. Additionally, I want to note that his responses to the application questions for mayor are strikingly silent regarding policing issues the city currently faces. I want you to know that the community is watching very closely, and may it be understood that a vote for Joe is a vote for a continued culture of corruption. It's a vote that betrays our city, and we need you to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Neil, how many, you got one more?
We have one more. It looks like our final speaker is Kirsten Vignetta. And Kirsten, just let me get your microphone here. You should be able to unmute on your side and be ready to go.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Kirsten Vignetta and I live in Ward 2. As Holly mentioned just a bit ago, 2 days ago, Springfield made national headlines in a Washington Post article titled, "Fatal police shootings of mentally ill people are 39% more likely to take place in small and mid-sized areas." The article opens with the final moments of Stacy Kenny, killed by Springfield police in 2019, a killing which naturally devastated Kenny's family and led to a lawsuit which the family won. As you know, the same police force is now being externally investigated for excessive use of force during the Black Lives Matter protest in Thurston on July 29th. We find ourselves in a politically and socially delicate moment in which there is deep division and in which the structure of our institutions is being put into question. We need leadership that will commit to racial equity, to helping those experiencing crises with a social origin, and to holding police accountable. And better yet, implementing alternatives to policing for nonviolent calls, solutions that actually get to the root of emergencies, based not on aggression, but on empathy. Empathy, something that is vastly underrated and certainly rare in the current political climate. To choose an interim, let alone a future long-term mayor without these issues as top priorities is to be extremely short-sighted and to do our city a serious disservice. In tonight's agenda packet, only 2 of the contenders mentioned these issues in any capacity, Sherry Moore and Sean Van Gordon. I urge the council to take this into account as you decide who should lead this city and address some of the most pressing issues of our time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So any more speakers to confirm that, Neil?
Councilor Pictionary, no speakers within City Hall and no one left online who wishes to speak on this issue.
Thank you, sir. Next item, please.
Is there a council response?
I'm sorry, yes, Sherry Moore.
I just wanted to say thank you to those people who spoke and to those people who are just listening in. I appreciate the fact that we're able to kind of broaden our ability to speak to people through this format, although it doesn't work real well sometimes. And I do appreciate all the emails that we've received, because we have, and I do read them, and today I didn't get around to commenting to all of them, but I will. But I just, you know, I think that all of us read those comments, those emails that we receive, and so I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, Sherry. And yeah, and Councilor Van Gordon, but I want to reiterate too that I read every single one of them, and I do, you know, it's not always fun, but I do appreciate what people are saying, and I do take it to heart. So Councilor Van Gordon, go ahead.
I think I echo what everybody's saying about reading the correspondence. One of the things I hear a lot is sometimes you don't hear directly from us back, so we read them. One thing I do want to mention that came up a couple of times is specifically referring to sort of acts of violence and political protests. I don't, you know, I think we've said it a couple of times, but in the country, we have a right to our First Amendment, and people, regardless of political affiliation, should be able to use their First Amendment right to talk about political issues without fear for their safety, without fear for their physical harm or mental harm or being abused, right? So when I hear stories about, you know, weapons on the street, you know, wasp spray, right? Like we had a big conversation about bear spray, I think 2 weeks ago. I just want to make sure it's clear that my position as a counselor is that I expect the police to enforce the law regardless of who it's against, right? They are an unbiased arbitrator in this, And, you know, as an elected official, they need to investigate everything. And if people broken the law or harmed people, they need to be held accountable for that. We're a law and order city. And I just want, I want to make sure that that portion's clear, because I keep hearing people come back and talk about their concern that we're not enforcing the law equally. And I think it's important that we say, you should be able to use your First Amendment. We have standards in the community. It is not okay to use violence against people.
Thank you, Councilor Van Gordon. Councilor Moore.
Can I just say too that I think our first speaker talked about the fact that we're not doing anything, and we have hired somebody to investigate, and he's now working on that. And we did tonight pass a resolution to allow RVs to be parked in driveways and next to houses, and to help alleviate some of the housing. And so I realize we move slowly at times, but we do something, and I just wanted to point that out. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm being defensive.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Any other comments? Councilor Moe, go ahead.
I've spoken several times that I'm very disappointed at how slow the process is going. But as a counselor, I'm finding out that sometimes there's not much we can do. Things have to be transparent. They have to be done legally. They have to be done in such a way that the public knows what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it just takes time to do it. Like city council meetings, bring things up. We have to get 2 weeks notice before we discuss something, and then 2 weeks notice before we discuss something else. And a lot of time goes by. I don't like that, but right now I'm not sure of any other way to do it.
Yeah, Joe.
Yes, go ahead, Marilee.
Steve just basically said what I was just going to say in regards to we need to go back and forth with staff to get all the information for a lot of our conversations. And so that too adds to the time. It's not for lack of energy or drive or wanting to get something done. It's the fact that there's so many different parts that have to come together in order to be able to make that legal resolution or make that legal ordinance. And we at the same time, we have to make sure that we are fair with the entire community and not just a segment or a single voice. We have to make sure that the whole community is being considered. So I can understand if I were on the other side and not seeing it from this side. I can certainly empathize with what has been voiced and what has been said, but there's a process, and sometimes it's very difficult to deal with the time it takes.
Thank you, Councilor Woodrow, and then Councilor Steer, go ahead.
Thanks, Joe. I'm appreciative of everybody's words tonight, and I would like to say that I hear conflicting goals being put forth for us. I'm hearing that we should move quickly, and I'm hearing that we should move judiciously. And I think to an extent, those two goals are always going to be in fundamental conflict. We are going to have to make hard decisions, of course, at the council. And it's not always possible to make a quick decision and a judicious decision. The wheels of government turn slow, but they do turn. I'd like to also say that those of you who have listened to these last few meetings know that I share a number of the concerns of the people who have spoken tonight. And I'm hoping that we can discuss some more of those as the discussion of who to put in charge of the council or to preside over the council for the rest of the year. I'm hoping that we can address a number of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Steer. Any more responses to the public comment? Okay, next item, Neil.
Councilor, the next item is business from the City Council. Item number 1, the mayor vacancy process. Mary Bridget Smith is here for the staff report.
Hello, councilors. This is a continuation of the discussion we had at work session about filling the mayor vacancy. I thought what I might do is just recap what I understood from your discussion at the work session, and then see if you wanted to continue from there, if that works. Okay.
Works for me. I got head nods, so yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right, so we started the discussion talking about filling the council vacancy and the concept that there's the current term and the next term. And the council was focusing on how to address the current term, seeing as it's getting to the end of the year. And the new term starts relatively shortly. Councilor Van Gordon had asked a question about incorporating the new future Ward 3 councilor into the process. And that I think was also a part that I had explained for the next term that starts in January. The actual swearing in for that needs to occur in January. Councilor Woodrow explained that she had done something similar when she was a councilor-elect. I think in this situation, if the council gave us this direction, we could reserve some time for your last meeting in December 7th, and see if the councilor-elect for Ward 3 would be open to participating. Couldn't take any official action, but could participate in a discussion if you wanted to head that direction. And then Councilor Woodrow was talking again about the current term having a very short time period, and suggested herself as a nominee for the council president pro tem to assist Councilor Piscineri while he's assuming the duties of mayor here at the tail end of 2020, leaving the council open then to move forward with appointing for the next term. And then we would have your meeting on January 4th is scheduled to do the swearing in for the next term for wards, let's see, that would be 3, 4, and 6.
I just wanted to correct that or clarify that
Sure.
my idea was to just to maintain status quo at the moment, and if we needed to, since I didn't have my hat in the ring, that I would be willing to propose myself for council president pro tem, but not to have any assuming of, or not to have any putting anybody in the interim mayor to the end of the year. That was just want to clarify what I said.
Understood.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Mary Bridget.
Oh, no, you didn't. I was just going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm trying to get the wheel of government to move faster, maybe. Who knows? So Councilor Moore.
Did you want to say something first? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
Did you want to say something first? You started to say something, and I raised my hand.
Well, it's, usually as I'm trying to be showing some good etiquette and allowing folks on the council to speak before I do. But I do want to just throw this out there for the council to consider, is that we have a total of like 7 meetings left for the rest of this year. We have some individuals out there that have raised concerns. I've heard them. I don't want to be part of the city. The city is most important to me, and that I want the smooth operation of the city to continue, and that I see that the path for that is to, I agree with Councilor Woodrow, is to continue as we have, and that will give us the time to make a selection at the end of the year and just move on, and that's what the city needs to do. So, but I'm totally open for comments, but I'm willing to do that as opposed to taking an appointment as interim mayor for the remainder of the year. I'm gonna go, Councilor Moore had her hand up before I did, before I jumped on there a bit, and then Councilor Steer after that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you'd be willing to continue to act as interim mayor until the end of the year. And I hear people talking about, well, we only have 6 meetings left. hopefully the mayor does more than preside at a meeting. That's my understanding. We have been more than 2 months since Christine resigned in making this decision. And I was concerned about why we were taking so long making this decision. But then I finally figured out, as I went through a whole lot of process this weekend, that part of it had to do with the fact that if you were to accept a position as interim mayor, you would have to give up your council seat. And so that would apply to Sean. It doesn't affect Leonard and it doesn't affect you, Joe, because both you are going to be sworn in at the beginning of the year to your council seat. It doesn't affect me because I am not going to be sworn in. I'm retiring. And so therefore, giving up my council seat wouldn't necessarily be an issue. We could fill it with the person who is elected to take my seat. But in the meantime, we have been moving along. Talk about slowly. It has been more than 2 months. And now we're at the point of we're saying, okay, city, it's fine that we just scoot on along without appointing a mayor to take this last 2.5 months or 2 months, I don't know how much time. And I feel really frustrated about that. And so I would like to call for a vote. If that's in fact what this council wants to do, then I think that each one of us should stand up and be counted in saying that we accept the fact that Joe is going to serve as interim mayor, basically, until the end of the year. I had 22 emails in the last 3 days asking me not to confirm Joe as mayor. I also had 4 asking me to do that. And I had 4 asking me to confirm Sean, although Sean says he doesn't want to be interim mayor until the end of the year. I had 1 for Leonard and 2 for me. So, well, we talk about transparency, but it doesn't seem like we're actually listening to what the public is saying to us.
I want to clarify again. I did not say Joe is interim mayor. Joe right now is assumed as council president, has assumed responsibilities, but he has not been interim mayor. And I wanted to clarify that that is not what I said.
I realize that, but what I'm saying is Joe acting as mayor or not?
He's council president.
Is he acting as mayor?
He's taking the responsibilities, but he's not titled mayor.
He's not titled as mayor, but is he acting as mayor? I'm asking that as a legal question. Mary Bridget, maybe you could tell me that. Is he not fulfilling the job of mayor at this point in time? He is signing documents, he's running meetings, he's representing the city as the mayor of Springfield. Is that correct or not?
He is.
I can answer that. I am not representing the city as mayor, just so you know. That's been very clear at all meetings and commissions, absolutely. Go ahead, Mary Bridget, you can answer if you wish.
I was just going to add that Councilor Piscineri in his role as council president is assuming the duties of mayor, but he has not been appointed as the interim mayor.
Councilor Steer, is that all you have? Councilor Moore? Thank you. Councilor Steer.
Thanks, Councilor Piscineri. I just wanted to run back through the process that we used to get to this point. The options that we considered for naming a new mayor. The first option, which would have been my preferred option, would have been to hold an election to change the charter. And then assuming that the measure to change the charter passed, then we could hold a special election for the mayor. Option 2 was to open the pool of applicants to include the Springfield community. And again, that was rejected. We have a third option now, which is the one that we're operating under. And given the pool of candidates and the time frame involved, I'm finding that the best option right now is for Councillor Pictionary to continue to preside in his current capacity as president of the council over the remaining 7 meetings of the year. He's been capable in his duties of running these meetings, and I trust that he grasps the urgency of the task that we have before us of creating and restoring trust in our police department and in our city government. And again, I would like to impress upon the people who spoke tonight that they consider how imperative it is that we make good decisions, not just hasty decisions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Councillor Moe?
I am understanding that you're not a candidate for being mayor as of the first of the year, right?
Me? No.
Yeah, okay. Just want to, I want people to know that because.
Oh yeah, no, I got voted with 68% of the vote as councillor, and I take that as marching orders for Ward 6, and that is where my heart lies, and that's where my duties lie. I'm just about keeping the city pointed forward and the ship upright, and making sure we get some things done in the meantime.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Oh, Steve, were you done?
Yeah.
Look, I think this is one of the weirdest conversations that we've had in a long time, right? Because the nature of the date, you know, and the terms and how the election landed is very much made this about 10 times more complex than it's had to be. You know, Sherry brought up the fact that, you know, I'm interested in 2021. I really don't want to go into the sort of half in, half out, right? Like that's sort of where the future lies about where this decision is going to be. I'm comfortable continuing where we're at, given a couple of things, right? Like given that we look at a little bit more of a published plan to get us from point A to point B, and that we start actually having, you know, like a conversation. We started to put some of this stuff in place about what do we do with the Ward 3 council seat when it comes up. What I would suggest is if we're going to go forward in this setting, is that we come back and actually approve a process, and I don't know if it's in November or whatever it is, but give people some dates that we're working towards so we get the thing done. My biggest concern is that we're going to keep just sort of pushing this down the road, and that, you know, we're going to essentially burn daylight when it comes to 2021, when we can actually have the conversation in a way that makes some sort of sense. So I guess that's my request number 1, or the assignment to the council leadership team, or the staff. The request number 2 is that I'm good with Mary Lee being pro tem council president. I don't know that we're going to fit it on a business card here, but I think what I would ask Joe and Mary Lee to come back with is actually some sort of conversation, and of course, you know, with staff's help, path through like how do we even understand and tackle the police issues. We're having them in an ad hoc kind of conversation. And I think it's going to get lost in the fact that we're in this sort of political transition, and just to drive a little bit of clarity. So just to wrap up, I'm comfortable doing what we're doing, given that we actually show how we're going to get from point A to point B, so that we actually get to a point we've got to make a decision, right? We can't just keep punting this down the road long term.
Joe?
Go ahead, Councillor Woodrow.
And coming in after Sean's comments, the possibility of including the councillor-elect after the election. We could set a date in November to have the discussion, so that we are setting a date to get into this and make a decision, or project, follow through with what Sean suggested. Did I get you right, Sean?
Yeah, and we have the material, right? Just to come back with, here's the date, here's the actual process to come through, you know, voting process, so that we feel like we're going to get to a date. We're actually going to make it, you know, I know Mary Bridge is going, you can't vote until January, but we got to give the community some sort of certainty here.
Yes.
Councilor Wood, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Moore?
I'm happy to resign after the election, after my replacement is voted in, and we could then make that counselor, if you're willing to appoint that counselor to that, if I resign, that would be an open seat. You could appoint that counselor to that seat, and then they could officially participate in the discussion and everything.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Sean.
Just to be clear, and that's what we've done historically, and I know that there's a ton of people sort of trying to clarify, like understand what's going on. I would be supportive of that, right? Regardless of if it's attached to what our plan is to how to get to talk about city council. But like Sherry, if after the election you decided like that you were ready and the new person was going to come in, that's an easy yes for everybody. I would assume for everybody.
Joe?
Thank you, Sean, and go ahead, Councilor Woodrow.
You can't see me waving.
No, it's good.
Yes, when it happened with me before, Fred was still counselor, but he sat back and put me at the table to participate in the process. We didn't need to have Fred's resignation. He just sat back and you know, at the time it was I think Sid was still mayor at that time, and he presided over the meeting, and everybody approved, okay, we'll do it that way. Since we can't vote in till January, Sherry wouldn't have to go through that formal process. We could do it a similar way that was done before, and have that person be part of the conversation, whatever anybody would want to choose to do.
Thank you, Marilee. So, Mary Bridget?
Yes, right here.
Okay.
Is your mind swirling yet?
She didn't run for the door yet, so we should keep.
Yeah, I'm just making sure she didn't hit the eject button.
I'm still here. So looking at the calendar, listening to what you're talking about, I think what I'm hearing is wanting to have a combination, I think kind of similar to what Councilor Scher was talking about, some urgency and moving it forward, but also some talking to the public and informing the public about the process, and also incorporating the new future counselor from Ward 3. So looking at the calendar, the election is Tuesday, November 3rd. I think that means your next regular meeting is November 16th. But I can confirm that, but we can see about getting, once the election is sorted out, having it would probably be a special meeting or a work session, asking Councilor-elect to attend. And then that person can give input into the following: the process for appointing the interim mayor, and then also, you know, when you choose from amongst the council, you create a vacancy in the council, and then the process for selecting that vacant position in the council, right? And that may be one where you want to go out to the public or have some more public process about how that would work.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Van Gordon.
So,
go ahead. I would be 100% clear on that. That if whatever that council replacement process has to be as wide a net as possible. So we cannot go out and pluck somebody, you know that may be connected or something, and it's got to be a pretty invite to it, apply process. And then I would just add one note, and again, I'm looking for some head nods here. I do not think we need to recreate a bunch of content about like questions and where people are at. I think we've got that information, even though we have to clarify the actual process. Meaning we've got our Q&A our Q&A from people who are interested.
Yeah, so you could use the information you developed for the interim mayor for the potential new counselor in whatever ward. Really, the issue would be getting the applications, so getting the word out and getting them in. Is that what you're saying?
I think I was saying that if we came back after in November, that we shouldn't go and ask people to apply to be mayor again. I think the whole council replacement process is a whole other bag of tricks, right? Like that we just need to tell people pretty clearly up front that we've got to go, we need to cast the net pretty wide for that.
Okay, understood. And then just so I'm clear, you're comfortable though talking about that process potentially in November and December?
I think, well, just want to add a little bit to that, Mary Bridget, as far as before we issue some edict, is that for me, it seems logical to, we don't want to go out and try to have a replacement counselor right off the bat. I think that's step 2, and we need to get to step A. And so I think with that being said, that I think that even the last meeting of the year, we can get the mayor position resolved, taken care of, and that the first of the year we can pick up the council position. And that way, during that month period from our last meeting till clear through to the January 4th, we could look and see and recruit or however process we want to do, and find that person that we want to place, and that will allow the new counselor to be part of that selection process. And frankly, if we try to do it that soon after the election, does the new counselor have to have their election results certified prior to us acting as if they are the counselor? So is that's something that has to happen too, I would assume.
I think those are good points. What I was just trying to get at, is it okay for us as staff to start preparing and asking you questions about the process for appointing the new counselor in November and December, like put together a timeline or potential things like that? So
Joe,
process is out there.
Joe?
Yeah, I got you, Marilee, go for it.
I was thinking that don't we have when we go out to recruit for commissions and committees and that, don't we have a time frame for the announcement of the open position, that we let the people know that that this is open and that they can apply? Don't we have a time frame that we have to meet?
You have a time frame. It's you have one that you've developed over the years about that. Yes.
And I think that would be appropriate. I think unless we're too short, but I don't think it is. I think that would be appropriate for getting that information out there amongst the community, for whatever ward it turns out to be, for people to be able to apply from that ward. I think we could. I think it's. I guess I'm saying that in order for you to have the opportunity to look at that and see if that fits.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful. I think that could be a good template to work off of.
Thank you, Councillor Woodrow. Mary Bridget, are you good now, do you think?
I think, let me just repeat back to you what I think our direction is, and then hopefully
Sorry.
see if we get close. No, that's okay. It's no problem. So I think what I heard was that the council, Councilor Pictionary for the very short term will remain as council president, assuming the duties of mayor. The council will look at appointing a councilor president pro tem to assist in the short term. And then you would like us to find some time soon after the election, and ask the councilor-elect for Ward 3 to have time where this council can meet, and you're interested in having a process that's quite clear and transparent with the public about how you're you're going to move forward with appointing the interim mayor and then also subsequently the interim counselor for whatever ward has the vacancy. And then Councilor Van Gordon made a point that once the president pro tem is appointed, that the Councilor Pictionary and the president pro tem keep this issue of police accountability on the front burner and reporting back to the council. Does that sound?
That's pretty amazing.
You got it.
Go ahead, Councilor Van Gordon.
One slight twist. Now that we're all, is that I think the goal out of November is to be clear on process and dates and not have any process and date questions left over going into that last meeting into December, so that everybody's got a full month with all the material, what we're actually going to do. The one thing I didn't like about the meeting format today was if we really got into it, we really didn't understand the 7 layers of questions we had to decide, and we weren't really clear on the process. And I think I would say we've got to be done with that and clear on it, and then just decide on whatever the December date is.
Okay, got it. That's good feedback. I appreciate that.
I'm okay with that. Head nods, Mary
Yes,
Lee.
nodding head.
Nodding heads. Okay. I see that Sherry has dropped off, so we can reflect that on presence of who's present here in the meeting. Oh, there she is.
You have to say her name
Goodness.
3 times.
I got scared. All right.
She's doing what I want to do, eating dinner.
Your microphone's not on, Sherry. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I'm having dinner.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. You scared me. You went away. I didn't like that. Okay. So, Mary Bridget, you are now good. Is that correct?
I'm good with, I have my direction for the interim mayor. I do need you, though, while we're all here, is to nominate and vote and appoint the council president pro tem to assist the council president. And that's the temporary changes to the council operating policies and procedures, which is item number 2 under business from the city council.
I move that Mary Lee Woodrow serves councilor president pro tem until the end of the year, until the end of 2020.
Do I hear a second? Second? Okay.
Joe, could I just cut in for a second?
Should we have a little bit of discussion, Sean? So go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand this. My understanding was that you were council president, and so council president pro tem would just be a subordinate to you in your capacity. I'll second that.
Okay. That just helping me with some meetings and also agenda review, so that way it's not totally all over me. And then also, for example, I may not be available the next meeting and need someone that's already appointed to conduct the meeting. That's all. That's what that position is. So I have a motion by Councilor Van Gordon, seconded by Councilor Steer. It may have been a co-second by Councilor Moe, but I don't know. So we have a motion on the table and it's been seconded. I call for a vote by roll call.
Councilor Van Gordon?
Yes.
Councilor Moe?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
No.
Councilor Stair?
Yes.
Councilor Woodrow?
Yes.
And Councilor Pictionary?
Yes. So the motion carries 5-1. Next item.
Just real quick, now that you've selected the person, I also need resolution number 4, a resolution temporarily changing the Springfield City Council operating policies and procedures, appointing a counselor to serve as council president pro tem, a motion to approve or not approve that temporary change to your rules.
I'm sorry, Mary Bridget, I just saw that too.
That's okay.
So I'll entertain a motion for approval of resolution number 4.
I move to approve number 4.
Got a
Second.
motion?
Second.
And I got to want to give that second to Counselor Moe. All in favor signify on roll call.
Counselor Van Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Moe,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Stair,
Yes.
Counselor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes. So the resolution number 4 has passed, and so we go with next item, please.
Council, the next item is any additional business from the council.
Anyone? Counselor Moe, go right ahead.
I just wanted to speak to what we just did. There's a lot of people out there that are going crazy right now with what we're doing, but I assure you, we have them in mind, and it's going to take some time. And I have their interest in heart, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be working on those issues that they're concerned about as hard as I can. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Moe. Anyone else? Marilee, I don't see you waving your hand.
No, thank you.
Okay. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the city manager. Item number 1, storm system revenue bond refunding. Resolution number 5, a resolution of the city of Springfield, Lane County, Oregon, authorizing the sale of storm system revenue refunding bonds. And Nathan Bell is here for the staff report.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening, council. The item in front of you this evening is a request to not adopt a resolution authorizing the sale of storm system revenue refunding bonds. This is a pretty straightforward item. I do want to mention though that because it was under 10 million, we had the option of doing a bank placement or a public offering. It was recommended to us by our financial advisors that the bank placements were competitive with the public offerings, but are significantly less work. And so we went that route. At the time of putting together this AIS, we hadn't received any of those proposals back from the banks. We since have, and sat down with our financial advisors and went over a summary of those. The savings that's noted in this AIS of $720,000 was based on an estimated interest rate of 1.5%. Our lowest rate that came back from the bank was 1.2%, which is one we will move forward with. So the savings are actually going to be $820,000 rather than the $720,000. With that, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. Doesn't sound like too bad of news to me. Any questions from council?
No.
Okay, thank you, Marilee. I have no questions, Nate. So I would entertain a motion for resolution number 5.
I move that we adopt resolution number 5.
Second.
Counselor Moe, Counselor Woodrow had made the motion, seconded by Counselor Moe. All those in favor signify at roll call.
Counselor Van Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Moe,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Stair,
Yes.
Counselor Woodrow,
Yes.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes. Next item.
Any other business from our city manager?
No further business, thank you.
Thank you. Any business from our city attorney?
No business, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for this long meeting, but we got a lot done. Appreciate it. I am adjourning this meeting. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.